Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting tonight. The meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, could you please read the adequate notice of compliance statement?
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the City Clerk's office in preparation of the Council annual meeting notice dated December 30th, 2021, which was properly distributed and posted per statutory requirements. Please be advised that the fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room.
Okay, thank you. And now, if we could have the roll call, please.
Ms. Allen?
Here.
Ms. Hairston?
Here.
Dr. Levine?
Here.
Mr. Miniger?
Here.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Here.
Mr. Vartan?
Present.
President Fox.
Here. Okay, and now it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. If I could ask all of our fire department and law enforcement to lead us, please. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read notices regarding closed session and hearings and comments?
Yes. A closed session meeting as authorized by state statute was announced and held prior to the start of this meeting, and the known items for discussion were listed on the published closed session agenda. Please be advised that council meetings are broadcast live on Comcast Channel 36 and Verizon Channel 30, and rebroadcast on Thursdays and Saturdays on HTTV on Comcast 36 and Verizon 33. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and address, spell your last name, and speak into the podium microphone so that your comments can be understood by all and properly recorded. Whenever an audience or council member reads from a prepared statement, please give or email a copy to the City Clerk's office at cityclerk@cityofsummit.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to approximately 3 minutes or so in length. Unless you are using an electronic device to follow the meeting agenda or need it for professional emergency contact purposes, please turn it off. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're on to approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the regular and closed session meeting minutes of October 18th?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we're moving on to reports. Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting tonight. A few announcements. Early voting for the November general election has begun and continues through Sunday, November 6th. The location closest to us here in Summit is in New Providence at the DeCorso Community Center on 15 East 4th Street. More information and a list of other early voting locations can be found at ucnj.org. The City of Summit is actively seeking volunteers from the community to serve on several of its boards and commissions. Each November, we begin the annual process of reviewing volunteer applications and appointing new members. Terms vary from 1 to 5 years of service with an opportunity for reappointment. The city keeps applications active for 2 years. The deadline to apply is November 18th, 2022. A complete list of boards and commissions can be found on the city website at cityofsummit.org/volunteer. Residents can apply online. Please contact the City Clerk's office at 908-273-6400 with any questions. Firefighter Chris Esposito from the Summit FMBA Local Number 54 was sworn in as the New Jersey Firefighters Mutual Benefit Association's newest state secretary at the organization's monthly meeting held on Wednesday, October 19th, 2022. Esposito was elected to the position in September 2022 at the New Jersey FMBA convention by delegates from each of the FMBA locals in New Jersey. Esposito served as secretary of the Summit FMBA Local 54 from 2013 until 2021, when he was elected to serve as executive delegate, a position he currently holds. Part of the NJFMBA Executive Board, the state secretary is responsible for taking minutes at meetings and conventions and maintaining their database of 5,000 firefighters, fire officers, EMTs, and dispatchers in New Jersey. Esposito joins 2 other City of Summit employees in leadership roles in their respective state unions. Summit firefighter Tim Deutsch has served as Central District Vice President of the NJFMBA since 2013 and was the former president of the Summit FMBA Local 54. He assists local associations in his district with contract negotiations and labor/management relations. Summit Police Detective Michael Freeman serves as the Vice President of Labor Relations of the New Jersey Police Benevolent Association. He assists local associations with collective negotiation agreements, grievance arbitration, and representation to the New Jersey Public Employment Relations Commission. And lastly, the Summit Police Department is hosting a community event on Thursday, November 17th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Azucar Buffet located at 96 Park Avenue in Summit. Citizens are invited to stop by and chat with English and Spanish-speaking Summit police officers, ask questions, or voice any concerns. Free coffee and pastries will be provided to all attendees. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And now on to Michael Rogers for the City Administrator's report. Michael?
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, everyone. Just two things. We appreciate the patience shown by the community during the two large infrastructure replacement and repair projects from PSE&G and New Jersey American Water. I know it's been incredibly frustrating for everyone. But the project to install new water mains on Morris Avenue is expected to be complete by November 18th, and gas line replacements throughout the city are on track to finish by the end of the year. Recent delays are mostly due to the inclement weather throughout the month of October. There is a full list of construction projects in Summit with impacted streets and timelines at cityofsummit.org/construction. Also, signing up for web notifications will generate an email or text about these projects. And as disseminated yesterday by the city's communication office, PSE&G will be performing milling and paving on several streets in Summit beginning yesterday, October 31st, mainly Hobart Road, Ridge Road, and Hobart Avenue in different sections. And then lastly, tomorrow, November 2nd, the remaining parklet will be removed from Springfield Avenue in front of Tito's Burritos and Batavia Cafe and be reinstalled in the spring. The parklets on Union Place have been removed. Maple Street will be reopened tomorrow as well, and decisions about continued street closure in 2023 are yet to be determined. Likely at the Council's December 6th meeting, a presentation by Summit Downtown, Inc. and its professional consultant on placemaking will present findings on its conversations with residents and business owners about the future use of Maple Street, among other things. And that's all I have for this evening. Council President, thank you.
Thank you. I'm noticing there are a few people in the vestibule. We do have some seats up front if you want to come on in. And I just had a couple of other items. First of all, citizens can sign up to volunteer for Habitat for Humanity in groups of 5 to 10 people to help build the new affordable housing complex in Summit at 146 Morris Avenue. Contact construction scheduling at morrishabitat.org or call 973-891-1934 to schedule a team build day. More information on team build days is available at morrishabitat.org. And Common Council is working on scheduling a day for those of us on the council to work together on this important and worthwhile project. I hope you'll consider participating as well. And finally, now is the time to compost your jack-o'-lanterns from Halloween. Residents can dispose of pumpkins now through mid-November at the municipal transfer station. Transfer station hours are posted on the city's website, cityofsummit.org. So thank you very much. And now we'll move on to presentations. We have a Ceremonial Chiefs Award by our Fire Chief, Chief Evers, and the Mayor, I believe, is also doing this. So I'll turn it over to them. For those folks standing in the back, there's still more spaces up front. You can come in and sit down.
I'd like the recipients come up to the front if you could. Squad, PD, and fire department.
Good evening. On July 28th, at approximately 1:08 p.m., members of the Summit Fire Department, Lieutenant Brian Harnois, firefighter Brian Tavis, firefighter Adam Orr, members of the Summit Police Department, Officer Leonard Franchino and Officer Jenny Ranke, and members of Summit EMS backup crew Anna Boyer, Alex Cohen, and Will Ziff, responded to 190 River Road, 3rd floor, for a report of a male in cardiac arrest. On arrival, Summit first responders started CPR and applied an AED to the patient. Several shocks were administered to the patient throughout the incident. Summit Fire, Summit Police, and Summit EMS continued CPR for approximately 40 minutes. The first responders were able to regain a pulse, and the patient began to breathe on his own. The patient was transported by Summit EMS to Morristown Memorial Hospital for further care. The successful outcome of this incident is truly an outstanding example of Summit's first responders working together as a team and saving the life of another. And we are here to thank them and congratulate them, and we also want to welcome Mr. Hetherington and his family. And thank you. Chief, would you like to present the awards, please? Help out.
Thank you very much. All I do is live. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
He did, not loud enough.
Thank you very much.
May I get a picture of them?
Please, no. You're in the middle of that.
Let's do the whole group, and then we'll do just.
I don't have to lay down.
And now just those who are at the scene. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
This one, you ready? What a great, yeah.
I don't remember anything, but on behalf of myself and especially my family, I truly appreciate the work and efforts and not giving up on me. I know I was an EMT when I was in the Army, something 40-ish years ago. So I know how impossibly long 40 minutes is, and I'm just thankful that I'm here and can appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
A few people from the department could make tonight, just want to give those, you can pass them on to Dustin. And also another member from the squad. Another example of how great emergency service works together in Summit. We have an outstanding first responder force in Summit. Police, fire, and EMS. We train together, we work together. All the training pays off in instances like this. I'm very proud of everybody. I appreciate all the work you guys do. Keep it up and enjoy the job. So, thank you very much.
That's great.
Thank you all very much. This was such a wonderful outcome, and we're so happy to see you here today, Mr. Hetherington. I'm going to give everyone like 5 minutes in case folks want to If they don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting, I understand. Certainly welcome to stay, but we'll give you just a couple minutes to step out if you'd like. Good night. Okay, we're going to get started again. We're going to take one of the capital projects resolutions out of order just before we do public comments. So I'm going to call on Councilmember O'Sullivan to introduce capital projects number 1.
Thank you, Council President. This is ID number 9961 to accept a donation of a village for a village green bench dedication. The City of Summit gratefully accepts a donation of $500 from former Summit resident Merowyn Trevisano. This money will be used to purchase a bench on the village green in memory of her brother Michael Trevisano. Michael sadly passed away in 2021 from COVID-19 at the age of 45. He grew up in Summit and worked for New Jersey Transit for 22 years. And I move this resolution.
I second.
Are there any comments from members of council?
Council President.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Folks will remember Michael Trevisano, better known as Big Mike, from his 22 years working for NJ Transit and his almost daily visits in the summer to the Summit Family Aquatic Center. As a former lifeguard myself, I was often impressed and then splashed by his eccentric performances off the diving board, and baffled by the speed with which he would fly down the water slide, which is now also named after him. This is a man who made people in Summit smile, and he is missed. I'm thankful to his sister, Merowyn, for this donation, and I enthusiastically support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from members of council? Ms. Trevisano, would you like to speak, or it's up to you. You don't have to.
Just for a second, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
Can I do it from here?
Yeah, what do we do about, yeah, that's right, just so people can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you all so much for this. He loved this town. We grew up in this town, or from, gosh, 40 years now. He loved the people of this town so much. He loved the Aquatic Center. He loved all of the events that happened on the town green. He loved the Halloween parade. And I just thought it was very fitting to, not only was I so touched by when Gretchen Masterfino emailed me last year about the pool donation, I thought it was just so heartwarming and amazing, and I really wanted to honor his love of the town as well by adding a bench to the town green that he loved to be at so much. So thank you everyone so much for your love of him and your support of this donation. Thank you.
Thank you for the donation. And are there any other comments from members of the public? Anything else from council? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing the bench on the green. So, and now we'll move on to the regular agenda. So the next thing up is public comment. So when you come up for your public comments, please respect, we've got a lot of people here, so please keep it to 3 minutes. State your name and address. And if you have a written statement, please give it to the clerk when you're done.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hard to follow up all that stuff with these mundane issues. Charles Cusimano, 22 Bedford Road, Cusumano. I just wanted to talk briefly and ask some questions about the Maple Street closure. I know there's been a discussion about possibly closing it year-round. I'm not in favor of year-round closure. I am in favor of some kind of compromise or modified closure. When school is in session, it's closed or maybe modified on the weekends. And then, when school's out in the summer, I think everybody loves it in the summer, having it closed year-round, the summertime only would be great. And then another modified schedule, September through, October 31st or so. Because it is a road. It's not a plaza, but a road road is designed to transport goods and people and circulate traffic. And it's one of the two roads that goes cross-town. Now, a year ago, I had a few email exchanges with Councilmember O'Sullivan and Councilmember Little about the Maple Street closure, and I was trying to find out if they thought it was a good idea, and they really wouldn't commit, because to me, just on quickly reading it, it seems like a bad idea to close it year-round, just common sense-wise. But they wouldn't commit. They said, we have to do our due diligence, and I said, fine. I did get an email from Councilman O'Sullivan saying that in the long term, the council will be asking the NJDOT to permanently close Maple Street from Maple Street to DeForest and to from Springfield to Union Place. And this closure has been really popular with residents and businesses alike. That's his quote. To me, I was a little frustrated. I felt like maybe the council was only doing the wishes of SDI, but that's just an opinion. And not listening to us. I mean, I felt like I was talking to a lot of people that I would just speak to where I go around town. I hang out with a lot of different crowds, and anybody I talk to would see them like, they would immediately say, why would you want to close it year-round? I also emailed Councilmember Little, and she said that, quote, we are taking tons of public comments, talking to the business owners, discussing at multiple public meetings, and finding out from the state what would be involved in closing the road permanently. And then we will have more discussion at public meetings, hear from the consultant hired by SDI, which is happening soon, and take more public comment and make the best possible decision we can. So what I'm asking for, has the council applied or asked NJDOT to permanently close it? I'm also asking how many business owners are in favor of permanently closing it? And are there going to be more public meetings just for this? Is going to be any kind of more public feedback? I never got the survey that went out, so I don't know what happened to that. They said SDI, you said in your statement that SDI is going to make us respond to residents. I don't know who they're talking to. To me, it's like I said, it's a very common sense issue. It's nice to have it closed in the warm weather. I don't think anybody's eating out there in the cold weather. It's freezing. Like, who wants to eat outside in the cold? I don't know anybody does. And it's a kind of a
Mr.
a day-to-day
Cusimano,
stress.
please
Okay,
wrap
yep,
up.
all right, cool.
Thank
It's a
you.
day-to-day stress, and we're all stressed out enough, and just having that road open would be easier during the school time.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I'll just quickly respond, so if the other questions are about this, maybe we can head off some of them. We have tentatively set a date on December 6th for SDI's consultant to come and talk to us about the Maple Street usage. And it's not just a permanent closure that they're talking about. They're going to be talking about ranges of options from doing nothing to, a temporary closure, and how to do some placemaking to make sure that it's being used by as many different user groups as possible, and ways to beautify it, because I know that people have complained about the orange barriers, and then going all the way to possibly a permanent closure. But, we've listened to a lot of folks and listened to a lot of comments, and I was at the SDI meeting a few days ago, so I heard comments there as well. When we have that presentation, there'll be an opportunity for questions, and that's not even, then later on, there will be an opportunity when we do have to make a decision, there will be more opportunities for comments. So we're not done with this process by any means. But I'll just say from my standpoint, and I'm only speaking for me, I don't at this point support a permanent closure. I think, I've heard a lot of comments about a seasonal closure, and I think a seasonal closure is something that most people in this community seem to be happy with. And we would have to figure out sort of what that would look like, what the fee structure would be, and all of that will take time because it will require ordinances for the fee structure and all of that. We have not gone to the state to ask for a permanent closure. So I hope that will answer some of the questions. With that, come on up, sir.
Yeah, hi. My name's Bob Ruark, R-U-A-R-K. I live over at 4 Crestacre Court. I've been a Summit resident since 1971, and this is the first time I've ever been here. And I am going to bore you about Maple Street for just a couple of seconds. I, as a retiree, don't get around much, but lately I've been driving down Summit Avenue in rush hour times, and I see how crowded it is, and I, as a global warming buff, wonder whether those people shouldn't be driving on Maple Street instead of Summit Avenue. A lot of people do. A lot of the times that I would go down some Maple Street, I can't do that anymore. And I wonder whether we're doing the right thing just to have some, not to be offensive, to have some outdoor dining when we should be making sure that we're getting the traffic through town. In that regard, I just wonder whether there shouldn't be a traffic study done. I've heard this stuff that SDI has a consultant. I don't know whether they've done a traffic study, but I think that it would be useful to look at Summit Avenue open, with Maple Street open and closed, and see how many people go down Maple Street and not back up onto Summit Avenue. One man's view. I guess I'm not, as an old-time guy, I can't handle the thought of, I always went down Maple Street and now it's closed. Maybe it's just because I'm old, but I think there's a lot of other people who feel the same way. Whether you close it in the summer, that's another thing, but with school and with commuting and the fact that this all started with COVID and there weren't a lot of people driving, now the cars are back and we see that, so one man's view. Sorry to bother you.
No, that's okay. It's not a bother. Thank you for your
Yeah,
comment.
thank you.
Just an answer to the question, yes, there is, no, you can sit. I'm just going to say that, yes, SDI did do a traffic study. I don't know the scope of it, but that'll be part of the presentation, and their traffic engineer. That's one of the reasons why it's a tentative date, because we're confirming that the traffic engineer is available for that date. Okay? Go ahead, sir.
Ephraim Stanley, that's Stanley, 31 West End Avenue. I have a number of questions, and I just want to make sure that if the councilor is unable to answer my questions tonight, I ask that they publish a written responses to them before the next council meeting. And in my questions, some reference is made to emails discussed previously by Mr. Cusimano. So before the council decides to permanently close Maple Street, I'd like to make sure that it has been thoroughly vetted for all safety issues, and whether the closure makes other roads and towns less safe, or whether the restrictions from such a closure imposed on our first responders is really worth the risk. So for that, I have a number of questions. Does the state require a safety study? And who must conduct the safety study? Would it be an expert on emergency response services? And when the council repeatedly implemented temporary closures of Maple Street over the past few years, did it consult with Summit's first responders, and if so, which ones? Did that include the fire department, the police department, the volunteer first aid squad, or Overlook Hospital? And then are there any written communications with these organizations? And did Police Chief Zagorski or Fire Chief Evers provide any written comments or recommendations? And if so, why weren't they included in the emails with the Oprah responses with Mr. Cusimano? What was the opinion of each organization? And did the council consult with multiple representatives of each organization? And if not, why not? And who from those organizations did the council consult?
Sir, can you just say, what organizations are we talking about here?
The
Police and fire?
first
So,
responders.
First responders, okay,
Police,
thank you.
fire,
Okay.
first aid squad,
Go ahead.
hospital. If the council, did any of these organizations or representative express any safety concerns, and was that in writing? And if so, why weren't those concerns communicated in the Oprah responses? And if the council decides to pursue a permanent closure of Maple Street, will it again, or for the first time, consult the Summit Summit's first responders. Again, the police, fire, volunteer first aid squad, or Overlook Hospital. And will the council obtain written recommendations from these organizations? And will the council consult multiple representatives from these organizations? And if so, who would those individuals be from those organizations? And then finally, will the council publish results of a safety study and communications with the Summit's first responders? And when will that information be made public? I'll make sure that these questions are posted to the
Yeah,
email.
do you
mentioned.
have a written version of those that you can provide to us?
I do, but this just has my notes. I will make sure that
Okay,
it's
'cause that was
submitted
a
to
lot
the
of
email
questions.
mentioned in the at the start.
I cannot answer any questions about what was or wasn't in an Oprah request. I can tell you that that is part of our property use decisions, and all of our, street closures, parklets, all of that, the police chief and the fire chief and whoever they bring in as part of that are part of, as well as our engineer, are all consulted on the safety aspects of any kind of action like that, any sidewalk cafe, any parklet, any street closure, temporary or permanent. I can't tell you what kind of paperwork was done, but there was a consultation process. Okay, so.
And that information will be published.
If it's available, it will be made public.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Kevin O'Connor. I live at Oconnor. I live at 638 Springfield Avenue, and I've been here slightly over 50 years. I'm here because I want to get involved with this street closure proposal on Maple Street. I'm not in favor of the permanent closure, maybe a temporary one throughout the year, but not a permanent one. Also, I know I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and we just sort of went through it. You want a copy of some of my questions, the notes, and you'll get back to me or to the public. And I see that you said, what is it, November? No. What's the date for the
December
SPI?
6th. December 6th.
December 6th,
We'll
okay.
publicize it when that's tentative. We're making sure that the traffic engineer is available.
Okay. I'm more concerned, my questions are with the state. What else does the state require prior to closing a road permanently? Will the state allow Summit to close any road? Does it matter if the road intersects a county road like Springfield Avenue? Did the city consider, I guess back in the day or a few years ago, it was Bryant Parkway, they were thinking of closing that between the two main roads down there. Did the city reject that idea on the grounds that it intersects a county road, Springfield Avenue? Why would Maple Street be any different than the Bryant Parkway road consideration? Why would the council deviate from the precedent it set on Bryant Parkway? Are the 5 restaurants on Maple Street that are, they do want it closed, period. I guess it's economics. Why are they any different than the people that live on Bryant Parkway? Okay. Has the council considered that the City of Summit master plan, what it says about Maple Street? Part 3 of the master plan is titled Circulation Plan Element and focuses on the movement of people and goods throughout the community. According to the overall policy statement of this section, quote, an understanding of circulation patterns and issues in the City of Summit is a critical component of the development of land use policies and the establishment of design standards. Decisions and recommendations regarding circulation issues have direct impact on public safety, overall quality of life for the community. Has the council determined how a permanent closure of Maple Street would impact the circulation of traffic in town? And you said you're going to have you're going to get a traffic.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up, but I think some of these questions are premature because at this point we have not had a presentation from SDI, from their consultants. So I think, you know, some of these questions, what I'm telling you is at this point we have not decided to do a permanent closure.
Okay.
And I don't support one. I can't speak for my colleagues, but I think, you know, this is the information that will come out in this presentation, and that will be a good opportunity to ask some of these questions.
Okay.
We don't have the results of the traffic study. We haven't seen them yet.
Okay. So you don't want my contact information?
Your contact information?
Yeah, no, yes?
Well, you can give it to us if you want to just provide it to the
But
clerk.
I'm over 3 minutes now.
Well, right, you can email it to the clerk, or if you have a piece of paper, you can hand it to her.
I will get you the list of these questions.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay,
Okay,
fine.
thank you.
Fine.
Good evening.
Hey, I'm Bob Pulowski. I live at 3 Crestacre Court. I'm going to have some questions too, and like Mr. Stanley had asked, if the council's unable to answer my questions tonight, I ask that it publish written responses to them before the next council meeting. I hear you guys talking a lot up here about how no decision's been made about permanent, yet I read 108 pages of documents that were provided pursuant to an Oprah request, and it really looks like it is going in that direction. And that's why I'm here, because I want to ask some questions about that. I want to know if you guys have been asking questions, or if SDI asked the question of, are you in favor of a permanent closure of Maple Street? Did SDI survey ask for that opinion? Or did it just ask whether people like eating outside, or if they'd like to be able to continue eating outside?
I think you're going to have to wait for the report, because I honestly don't recall what the question was.
Okay, well, so that would probably be a problem with any such survey informing you guys if, as some of us suspect, permanent closure of Maple Street is on the table. How many people did SDI survey? Did SDI survey limit its participants to residents, property owners, and business owners of Summit? If not, what percentage were actually in Summit? And why should it matter what anybody else thinks about what we do with Maple Street? From what I can tell, and this has been reinforced here a little bit tonight, any due diligence the council's conducted on this issue so far is lacking. If you're planning to permanently close Maple Street, you're going to have to do better. You're going to have to comply with proper standards and comport yourselves as the trusted representatives that we hope you all are. The city deserves to know, when this is all over, what are the pros and cons of any closure of Maple Street. And on the pros, we want to hear more than just the fact that people like to eat outside sometimes. On the cons, please be honest with us. You owe it to the city to be transparent and publish the bad with the good, so that the public comment you claim you want will be an educated one. Your role to the people in Summit is as a fiduciary. And I want to know if the council will complete the rigorous due diligence process that's necessary to comply with the applicable New Jersey statute for this, which is NJSA section 40:56-68. It's a pretty tough and rigorous 5-part conjunctive test. And I want to know if you're going to address all those prongs and do your research on those before entertaining any vote on the closure of Maple Street. And if you won't do that, I'd like to know why. Under that statute, you have to come to the conclusion, among other things, that pedestrian use is the highest and best use of Maple Street. And some of my friends here have said already, there's only 2 streets in town that connect the north and the south, and that's one of them.
I'm going to ask you to finish up now, please, sir.
Okay.
If you have those written questions, if you can
I'll
provide
send
them
them
to
in.
the clerk.
I'll send them in and then some. Listen, to close, I just can't figure out why there would ever be any debate of closing such an important street permanently, and in my opinion, otherwise, but I understand that some folks don't agree with that. Honestly, I have myself thinking, is this some kind of a progressive pet project that somebody on the council has? Or are you trying to leave some kind of a personal mark or legacy on Summit by closing Maple Street? I hope not, and I hope it's not a precursor to closing more roads and turning Summit into some kind of an urban center instead of the suburb that we all love.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning.
Good evening, whatever. It's already been a long night.
Good
Yeah.
evening.
Good to see you, Mr. Melchiona. Thank you, sir.
Well, there was a World
I
Series.
usually see you in the morning at SDI. That's,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, today there was a World Series game today, wasn't there? So there were lots of fastballs. I just got a fastball tonight when I got to council, because I'm hearing from people and seeing nodding of heads that this isn't going to be a permanent closure. Well, that's news to me, because I've been on Maple Street for 40 years. Did I say 20 Melchiona, 42 Maple Street? Sorry. And now all of a sudden I'm seeing and hearing that this isn't going to be a permanent closure. So I have a lot of notes and written, but I'm going to cut right to the chase. And there's two big elephants in this room right now, and that's the legality of serving alcohol on a non-permanently closed, quote, pedestrian mall. And as you can see, and I'll read to the general public here, a retail licensed restaurant cannot serve alcohol in a closed off-street pedestrian mall, as described in this email, which I had a liaison back and forth with ABC, Alcohol Beverage Control. The licensee can apply for ABC, expand their premises, permit to extend its premises to adjacent outdoor area, including a public sidewalk, provided licensee has authorization from the municipality and exclusive possession and use of that area. The licensee would also need municipal approval pursuant to the outdoor dining. So right now I'm thinking, okay, I can't wait to finally drive down my street, which I've been on for 40 years, because we're going to remove these ugly orange barricades filled with water. This is maybe something for the city solicitor, doesn't have to reply to me right now. So we're talking about a 3-month, as I coined the term, schools out, tables out, schools in, tables in. I don't think, and according to this from the Alcohol Beverage Control, it has to be a permanently closed street to serve alcohol. Period. City solicitor could tell me otherwise. The next big elephant in the room, city solicitor may agree to this also. This is a public street being used for private businesses, for private restaurant businesses that use the street. And we close down a public street for private enterprise? Where's the bid contracts? No bids went out. Now, they weren't being charged. But if one day this turns into some sort of pedestrian mall and there's restaurants out there, eateries, whatever, and the square footage on the January 16th meeting that we had, and many people were here in attendance at SDI, Nancy Adams, the SDI director, all of SDI executive committee, Rita McNanny, personal parking services, city planner, I don't remember his name right now, Aaron Schrager, who's here tonight, DCF, and also Dylan Baker from the Summit House. So the city planner was going to come up with some sort of monetary fees. Parking spaces, I remember him saying $2,500 per space. And then we were going to figure out some sort of square footage for, let's say, we know Fiorino's, and how much space can you take on that street. A special emphasis was made, which Dylan Baker had something to say about. You can't expand. If you have 100 square feet inside your restaurant, you can't expand to 200 feet out there. Dylan didn't like that because of his one little small bar that he has at the end, which is having a kicker party right now. So with that being said, and the city solicitor, I guess, will advise you all, it's a no-bid contract, people. You got to put it out to the public. And that doesn't mean, since Fiorino is right in front of Maple Street, I'm not just not picking on him because he's going to yell at me tomorrow, but you need to open this up to bids. I don't know if you can answer that tonight.
Mr. Melchiona, all comments come through me. Your time is up, and thank you for your comments. I don't think we're going to get into this right now. We are not at the point where we're ready to make those determinations.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you. But we will, when the time comes, we will get to that. Good evening, Mr. Bennett.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Radis, Council President, members of Common Council, Jim Bennett, B-E-N-N-E-T-T. 38 Fairview Avenue. I want to express my concern about any plan to permanently close Maple Street to vehicular traffic. During the pandemic, it made sense to populate this area with tables, umbrellas, and chairs. The pandemic is now over, and the time has come to rethink the closure of this thoroughfare. I do not claim standing to speak for the non-restaurant tenants on that street. However, I have standing to speak for myself. Several non-restaurant tenants have said that when their leases are up, they will move if the closure of Maple Street becomes permanent. If these businesses move, their departure will affect the tax base of the city of Summit and eventually me. Therefore, it makes no sense to drive non-restaurant businesses away. And even the utility of permanent closure to restaurants requires closer scrutiny. My daughter lives in Los Angeles, where outdoor dining with heating lamps is feasible year-round. In these latitudes, however, outdoor dining is not. With heating lamps, outdoor dining might make sense through October and resume in March, but no inundation of heating lamps will make outdoor dining tempting in the dead of winter in New Jersey. Finally, you will hear others talking about the wasted time in traffic to deliver elementary, middle, and high schoolers to their morning destinations. And closing off Maple Street will divert emergency vehicles when minutes count in saving a life. Council needs to explore other solutions. For example, during the summer when school is out and people are away, the disruption to closing a segment of Maple Street might be minimal. One could even have attractive pavers to make the street a pedestrian mall during those months and on weekends. The pavers should accommodate, however, vehicular traffic so that during the school year, on weekdays, there would be no disruption to the school flow of traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Bruce Thurkoff. I'm the owner of 26 Maple Street in Summit, and I've got some comments here and copies of.
Want them distributed?
There's been a few people up before me, so a few of these things might be a little competitive. But just like the gentleman before me mentioned, the reason for the outdoor dining was to allow restaurants to serve customers outside, as indoor dining was restricted to only carry out orders during the pandemic. Once indoor dining was allowed again in the state of New Jersey, outdoor dining was kept in place to appease those restaurants currently serving outdoors for an additional year, while in some cases doubling their capacity to accommodate their patrons. Maple Street, which was closed down for periods of 7 to 8 months, continued to be closed down to appease just 4 restaurants over the objections of all the landlords owning properties on Maple Street. The closure created a complete erratic traffic pattern, causing traffic to have to circle additional blocks just to get to their location. Construction vehicles that were doing work on buildings on Maple Street had to park 2 or 3 blocks away from the site they were working at, and forced to walk back and forth every time they needed additional supplies or tools to complete their work, causing higher costs to the landlords due to the additional time being charged. Supply trucks are double parking to drop off their food and orders, adding to the traffic chaos. North-south traffic had to be redirected to Summit Avenue, with more stressful, having to make adjustments, redirected to Summit Avenue with emergency vehicles, having to make adjustments which could have made their efforts more stressful, as seconds could cause lives at risk. The roadblocks prevent adequate street maintenance. I have spent numerous hours sweeping my building's sidewalks, as well as a street curbing that at times looks like a dump. With your barriers there, they don't get regular maintenance, you know? So, and that's the landlords, and I don't own a restaurant. So I'm out there sweeping everybody else's garbage up. It's my understanding that the surveys were distributed to 4 different groups. each one with a different language, with some trying to influence the groups with positive language, as if everyone was for having them all. All these surveys were tainted. I've spoken to people that do surveys for a living, and they all laughed at how they were presented. I am told that the landlord surveys were limited to only landlords on Maple Street and up to 200 feet adjacent to Maple Street. Who in the right mind would think that the, I'm saying terrible, traffic pattern doesn't affect all the owners downtown? I was never notified or contacted. Although originally I was told I would be interviewed. And then told later by the SDA board that there would no longer be an interview.
Mr. Thurkoff, you've gone well over 3 minutes. If you could please wrap up.
I just have a little bit more.
No, there are a lot of people standing behind
That's
you.
been 3 minutes?
Your 3 minutes is well up. You're done. You can finish your sentence, and then you're finished, please.
Well, let me just,
No, sir. You sit down, please. There are other people behind you waiting. Thank you. Come on up. Good to see you, Mr.
Council
Stewart.
President, Madam Mayor, council members, fellow citizens, city employees. I am here to talk about not Maple Street. I'm here to talk about Morris Ave and Springfield. There are lights. I understand that these are county roads and the county has jurisdiction over those, but those roads have traffic lights on them. And at Morris Ave and Kent Place Boulevard, the traffic lights basically are what I would call dumb traffic lights, as far as I can tell. You can go there during the day, and you can stand there for like whatever it takes to cross the road. You press the button and you wait a period of time. You can go there at 10 o'clock at night. There's not a vehicle anywhere in sight in any direction. You still have to stand there because somebody could come flying over the bridge without notice. If we had smart traffic lights there with sensors, timers, properly programmed, like I had when I lived in Michigan 30 years ago, they would be able to, you'd press a button and the sensors would be able to detect whether there's any traffic coming. And would be able to immediately say, hey, there's nothing coming this direction, there's nothing coming this direction. You know what? I'm going to let that person cross, and it changes. And this is not complicated technology. It needs to be put in at the Kent Place and Morris Ave, and the same situation, almost identical to that, applies at Springfield and Morris. If you come back on a Sunday morning, there's very little traffic. You're coming back from farmer's market, you have to stand there for ages after pressing the button, even though there's no traffic anywhere. I understand those are busy roads, and at certain times of day, traffic absolutely should have, vehicular traffic should have precedence. But like in the middle of the night, it just doesn't make sense. It makes no sense at all, and this can easily be solved. A further thing that I actually discovered, I discovered it more recently, but this involves the traffic lights that are just past the, turning onto Broad Street. The green light to be able to turn left goes for like enough for maybe 3 cars to go before changing back. Most of the day that's not a problem, but in the morning, for instance, at drop off at like 7:30 in the morning, the schools are dropping off, people are dropping off at the train. If you're coming up Morris Ave over the hill to Springfield Ave, you cannot get through there because there's traffic ahead of there is waiting to turn, and it can't turn because there's a lot of oncoming traffic. So the traffic gets backed up. In fact, this morning, there was like no way for any traffic to proceed from the Morris Ave at Springfield across Springfield Ave because it was blocked up by traffic waiting to turn left, because they couldn't turn left because the lights only let 3 people through at a time, and then people coming along Springfield were able to turn right. I don't know if all that makes sense. My mind's kind of numb now after standing there for so long. My blood's not circulating. But I think what I'd like is for the city, I assume you have liaisons with the county, to put in a plea for like some kind of smart traffic light systems. I certainly know they exist. I was out in New Hope recently, and I saw a guy like fiddling around with the box for the traffic lights, and I spoke to him for a while, and he said, "Oh yeah, actually, I've got the box open because I'm optimizing the flow of traffic." So this can be done. This technology has existed for years and years and years, and for some reason the county just doesn't want to put it in there. I don't know why. Maybe we haven't asked. I assume we probably have, because I know I brought it up before, not at a council meeting, but like with the police department. And they just, the response is always, yeah, it's the county. And it's like, you know, I have to believe somebody can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Wait, could you just state your name and address
Oh,
for the
sorry,
record,
Gordon
please?
Stewart, 54 Evergreen Road.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank
Mr. Schrager, do you have any answers on the smart lights? Thank you.
Through you, Council President, there was a lot there about traffic signals. So a little bit of a overview of our city's traffic signals. We do have 32 within the city, 4 of which are fully city-owned and on city roads. 28 are on county roads, but they are city-owned. So what happens is when a signal is needed or replaced on a county road, they pay for it and replace it, and then it's turned over to the city where we then maintain it. That said, we don't have the right to just go change timing of corridors without county approval. So for some of these corridors, we are looking at the Morris Avenue corridor right now. You do have 13 signals in a 2-mile span, which is a lot. And we have to understand a lot of these signals, the timing is set based on traffic counts that might be 10 or 15 years old. So there might be a need for adjustment. We wouldn't know until we do a corridor study. For the Morris Avenue one, the RFP for that should be hitting the street very shortly, so we'll be looking at that one. The smart signals, a lot of them do have the camera detection technology, so, and then the pedestrian buttons should work. It sounds like Mr. Stewart identified 2 that are not functioning right now. We don't check them every day. We do rely on users to report it, so we will have someone from DPW check them out tomorrow. We also are currently just started our annual inventory of the signals, in which they look at every signal we have and identify any repairs that are needed. Additionally, I know he spoke of Broad Street and Summit Avenue. Same thing, a timing would need to be looked at there. It's the first report I've heard of that we've had trouble there. I know we have some situations with pedestrian and vehicle conflicts there that we have looked at, but changing the timing is something we could do. We just have to look at that signal individually.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schrager. That was very helpful. You know what, this isn't the time for that. If you want to send an email to me or to Mr. Schrager, we can do that. Thank you. Come on up.
Good evening. I'm Brian Gagnon, and I reside at 27 Bedford Road. I lived in Summit for 30 years, and I have never spoken at City Council. I timed my speech in exactly 5 minutes long, which I know is longer than your requisite, but I hope you give me the full time to get my points across in my once in 30-year history.
Sir, I'm sorry, but, you know, I don't mean to be difficult, but there are other people waiting. It's 3 minutes. If you want to send a letter, you know, if you have questions, we're happy to take them.
Then I'll speak fast.
Okay,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
I'm here to discuss your clogged artery issue we have in town, and I've come with a solution to fix and generate more revenue for the town. There are 3 primary streets through Summit: Summit Avenue, Morris Avenue, and Maple Street. Choking off one of the major arteries has single-handedly caused citywide traffic angina, and this is before any decisions are finalized on Broad Street West project, coupled with the influx of people and the overbuilding happening in close-in Chatham. Now, I personally like outdoor dining, and I applaud you for moving quickly out of necessity at the beginning of the pandemic to help safeguard our residents and provide an outlet for the restaurants to stay in business. However, permanent closing Maple Street is not the way to solve this issue. The pandemic is coming to an end. We must fix this traffic issue and the deplorable conditions in our downtown space now. There are over 200 outdoor restaurant seats in Summit, including but not limited to Roots, Finn, Summit House, Piatino, Fiorino's, and Wimberry's. Simple math shows 200 seats turned 3 times a day at $50 a seat at 120 days a year is over $3.6 million of additional revenue to these restaurants, with limited, if anything, going to the city, using city property to expand their businesses. But I didn't come to give you facts. I came to give you a solution. The solution is expand the sidewalks on Maple Street to their maximum capacity, which is exactly 4 feet on either side, the width of a parking space. Eliminate the minimal parking that exists on Maple Street and allow tables to be set up on the sidewalks, similar to the Office, Wimberry's, and Committed Pig. Eliminate all parklets because these are a major eyesore conceived out of necessity and left to deteriorate over the past several years from neglect and substandard construction and maintenance. Then, to generate revenue, the town should charge these business owners substantive revenue for the sidewalks in addition to permit fees. I've already given you on the math how restaurant owners are making millions off of additional seating, and I'm likely low by half. Because everyone knows you can't eat dinner at Roots or Summit House for $50. Hold every restaurant accountable. Same standards, same tables, same chairs, same barriers, same maintenance, and even simpler, provide them with the seating to keep their continuity and recover the costs and the rent you charge them. My last topic is homelessness, and I really hope you let me finish here. Homelessness in our town and the unsafe conditions that are being caused by it. We have watched the homeless population explode in town with seemingly zero action, or at least results from our government. Passing through the train station in the mornings is just disgusting and unsafe. Even as recently as this morning, a fight broke out in the train station at 6:30 between two homeless people. My wife was recently verbally attacked outside a Manhattan Bagel by a homeless person. Though I do feel for the homeless population, this is your job to tackle this issue. And I purport that the extent of this homeless population did not exist before the massive outdoor dining was expanded. I promise I'm almost finished. At the end of the day, we are all residents of this great town and home we call Summit. Even most of the city council members are homeowners. Lastly, you have a town full of bright financial and real estate professionals who will not run for council because they are already over 100% busy providing for their families. But tap this resource. They will find the time. Employing the talented that understands that an amortization table is not a place you put your drink could have helped you tremendously when you were saddling future generations with $57 million of additional debt. No offense, but your city finance staffs are Pee-wee football and the residents are NFL. Ask, and you'll get some of the most expensive talent in the country for free.
Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. Could you please email that statement to our clerk, or if you have a printed copy, you could hand it to her?
I didn't make enough for everybody.
No, that's okay.
It's okay.
You just need one for her.
Gum for everyone.
No, that's fine.
She sends it to all of us.
She sends it, we get it. Come on up, sir.
Marcus McNamara, 53 Morris Avenue, Mike Charlie November Alpha Mike Alpha Romeo. A few questions, I'm just going to run through them. Let's see. SDI, they're paid by our taxes, correct?
No.
No? How's SDI paid?
Additional assessments that the business owners pay in the Summit downtown.
Through taxes or?
It's a separate assessment. They pay their
Okay.
property taxes, business owners, and then on top of that, there is by state statute, an assessment that
Roger.
goes to SDI.
Roger that. Okay,
So
how
you and I
much
don't
does,
pay for it.
Roger that. How much does the consultant cost for this permanent closure?
They got a grant for that. I don't know the amount of, but it was a grant. It's paid for by a grant.
5, 10,000?
We don't know.
Don't know, but it's paid for by a grant, sir.
Okay. Let's see, yeah, I just want to give a big thumbs down. I'm not for that closure. My mother, my great uncle had a business on that street at 30, where Finn is. It was handmaids, and then it was Walter McNamara, Insurance and Real Estate, when he got out of the Navy as a PT corpsman. So I couldn't imagine if they had to have their business there now, not being a restaurant. So I'm thumbs down on that. I'm not into it. Homelessness. What is the jurisdiction of the bus shelters? Whose jurisdiction
We'll take all
is
your
that?
questions at the end, just.
Okay. Whose
okay.
jurisdiction is that? Is there a loitering law in Summit? Is there open container? Is there drunk and disorderly? Is there a law for drug use? All right. Okay, Onyx property, 86 Morris Avenue. So in their statement, they did $221 million in capital improvements since they've had it. Are all the permits closed there? I guess, I don't know who that would be.
We'll have to get you that information.
Roger
I don't
that.
know that.
So my question is, what is the increased value of those improvements? I know if I did a bathroom in my house, and my taxes went up substantially when I had a house on Sayre Street. Roger that. We're moving on. Has anybody visited a Toll Brothers house building yet? Okay. All right. And then again, I'm just looking for money that we can recoup, so there's not this imminent threat that we're in such danger of taxes having to be raised. You know, the thing Mr. Rogers had said that, you know, the hospital negotiated a tax reduction and whatever, it was CBGI, I don't know what it is now, Merck or whatever, Bristol Myers Squibb. So they were paying something like, does anybody know? Anyways, a $4 million reduction. I think the mayor had stated that they bought the property at a low amount, and it had been valued at, it had been on the market for a long time. Large office parks weren't moving in 2008. But at one point, I looked at the tax record, and it was under it said it was sold to the city of Summit, or something like that. I don't know, that's something to look into. What else? Okay.
Sir, your time is up.
One last thing. Backpack blower, you guys said there was gonna be a study. I did an open records request on the survey and all that. It didn't go through. I sent an Oprah request. I received back that there was no such study sent, or survey sent out. I just need you to know, you were messing with people's lives, people's livelihoods. These people lived paycheck to paycheck. They had to buy this material, these machines.
Sir, your time is up. Okay, I hear you.
And it's not fair.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Dennis McKeever, 16 Clearview Drive. I'm a parent of 3, high school student, middle school student, and elementary school student. I served as the Little League president for 4 years, 8 years on the board of directors. I'm very familiar with the field, actually getting across town, because as some of you may know, I've been forced to drive across town quite a bit for Little League games. I'm also a municipal attorney, so I'm very keenly aware of an ordinance that would cap the time, and I appreciate the fact you would take my questions that I would email to you. The question I do have, though, is SDI, I understand what they are about. There's probably a scope of that particular grant. Have they retained, or will they retain, the use of a town planner to evaluate the master plan with respect to the closure of Maple Street? That is my question. I have sub-questions to that, because the master plan, I imagine, may have to be addressed, and potentially by a different municipal entity outside of even the council, should they adopt an ordinance. So that's my question. I understand that the SDI, it's a whole different entity. The SDI is giving a presentation on December 6th. I look forward to seeing their findings. But I am going to ask that question to see if they are going to have a planner evaluate this, because some of the items that have been mentioned by the taxpayers here may have an impact on how the master plan actually works and what components to it might be triggered by a permanent closure. With that, have a nice evening. Thank you very much. And by the way, you did a nice job. My son was here about a month ago. Thank you very much, because he was very thrilled to see you, Mayor, and to be honored as a part of the 130 years for Summit football. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dennis.
Good evening, members of the council. Nick Turiel, 25 Grove Street. So I'm going to change it up. This isn't going to be about Broad Street West. It's not going to be about Maple Street closing. This is just going to be about Summit and what we're missing here. I'm a lifelong resident of Summit. I volunteered in many organizations here in town. I've been a volunteer coach. I'm a life member of the Summit EMS, and I also own a small business. I've always felt that the part of what makes Summit so special is the amazing community. For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to raise my kids here, knowing they would feel safe, get a great education, and be part of a diverse community that focused on taking care of each other. That's why we're Hilltoppers, through and through. Unfortunately, I'm growing very concerned. In the last few weeks, there's been some incidents that have been happening in and around the train station, Union Place, the bus stops. One of them just last week, there was an incident in Dunkin' Donuts where a former homeless person that used to live in Summit came back again, got into an altercation with a female customer. From what I understand, coffee was thrown on her, a chair was, whatever. I'm not going to go into details. What is presumably either between two homeless people, the individuals and the resident. This is the same, now let me get back to the train station, excuse me. In 1 week, there has been 2 fights at the Summit train station between what is presumably either between 2 homeless individuals or a homeless individual and a resident. And just this morning, like Mr. Gagnon said, there's been videos that have been showing of a fight that broke out. There are kids that are walking in this train station every day when they leave school, or either walk home or come downtown. Every parent should be incredibly concerned about what's happening at the train station. I got a question. What if there's a confrontation while the kids are walking through and one of the children gets injured, if there's a fight or something? Who's responsible? Who takes the responsibility for that? I have 2 children who frequently go downtown with their friends, and I've always told them, stay away from the train station. And now, especially now, I don't even want them even going in that building. One of the many reasons why Summit is a desirable place to live is because of our Midtown Direct train that takes people back and forth to the city. Now, if the rumor starts that it's not a safe place, I mean, we're going to see more and more people not wanting to come to Summit, buy homes, or commute through the Summit train station. We're a very compassionate town. We always want to take care of our own. We need to ensure that everyone are treated with dignity. And because of the numerous nonprofits locally who could bring us and help these people, such as Grace, Family, Promise, Bridges, many of us feel like, you know, what can be done? I want to ask you, Mayor, and this is...
Sir, all comments have to come through me, you don't
Okay,
direct.
Council President, this is for Mayor Radis. You're the head of the police department. Chief Zagorski reports to you. Can you shed some light to the community? Why is this happening at the train station, the bus stops, and what could we do, especially to keep our kids safe and the community safe?
Sure. So,
You can go ahead and sit down.
One more thing.
Okay,
Of
your
course.
time is up, so finish
Okay,
up, please.
one more second.
Yep.
And the other question, with New Jersey Transit pulling out of the Summit Station, pulling their precinct, has that been an increase of more homeless and our resources with the police department working overtime in there?
I'm going to have Chief answer this with me, Chief. But, so, yes, we have noticed and we are aware of an increase in the homeless in our community. It's not explosive, I won't use that word, but it certainly has increased. We had a meeting last week with the head of Bridges, and we have a couple of things. One, they've hired a case manager who is going to be working with our police officers to identify who all these folks are, what's the profile on them, and then try to get the right way to help them. We additionally are going to be working with the Housing Authority to get vouchers for apartments. And they're called export vouchers because the reality is a voucher from, and the money has to come from HUD. The reality is a HUD voucher is not going to pay for an apartment in Summit. But these vouchers are used in many other towns that are probably east of us. So we're working with them on that, and we are aware of that. I don't know if the increase in the number of homeless in the train station is related to transit, but I'll let Chief answer that. And then also, transit had, the train station had been closed for several years. It's the first year I was mayor, we got the transit to close it from like 2 to 4, and then 2 years ago, they opened it up again. Now they've just closed it down again between 2 and 4, which that doesn't solve a problem. It just moves it outside. So, and Chief had dealt with New Jersey Transit on that. There is, unless a homeless person is, and there is no we don't have a loitering law in the state of New Jersey. So people can stay in public places as long as they are not creating a disturbance. The gentleman who you're referring to, who had been homeless for a long time in Summit, often was living on the ramp at the library. It took a year of being very careful to document the incidences there for him to move, and now he's got an apartment in another town. But he was back in town that day for a doctor's visit. He has been arrested and charged with assault for that incident. So we are taking, it ends with me, absolutely, and I take this very seriously, this responsibility. So we're working on it. It's not an easy problem to solve because of the New Jersey State Supreme Court has held very firmly multiple times. Well, I don't know if it's multiple times, but they have held very firmly that a person who is homeless can be in a public space as long as they're not creating a disturbance. And that was a court case that initially came out of Morristown. So I take this very seriously, and we are taking steps to try to fix it. But again, it's not going to happen overnight, and we're going to try to get them as much help as we can and get them in home. Bridges, they were telling us, Richard Muniak was telling us at our meeting the other day, that Bridge's approach had always been, try to get them treatment, these gentlemen and these clients, get them treatment, and then find them housing. And they have flipped it completely in the last couple of years, having determined that getting them housing first is important, and then quickly thereafter, get them treatment. So that's what we're hoping to do with their assistance. I've got to call into Keith Kennard at the Housing Authority because they have to make the application to HUD. But we'll see what happens there. But do you want to address the transit?
Sure. Through you, Council President.
Of course.
The mayor pretty much covered everything, pretty much everything, especially with the long-range plan. I could speak to the short-range problems that the gentleman was discussing. Transit is no longer, set up in the train station. They do have jurisdiction at our Summit train station, but if there are any problems in there that I'm hearing, if I'm hearing them correctly, these are Summit residents that are in there. Even though transit has ultimate jurisdiction, there being Summit residents in there, if they're reporting any safety issues, any problems, I'll see that we post an officer there for the rush hour. We did that in previous years. We'll start doing it again. If there's nobody available, I'll be standing out there myself. But if there's any problem in the train station and it involves Summit residents, we'll take the initiative until transit can get there.
So transit doesn't have any police
They
officers
do
on?
periodic patrols, but there's nobody stationed
No,
there.
no one on station. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for filling us in on that. So come on up. Hi.
Miriam Zahn, 65 Woodland Avenue. This is what happens when you come to a council meeting. You hear everybody's questions, and then you realize you have some questions. So these are just notes, not anything particularly written, but I heard a lot of questions about the survey, and I was wondering if the city council reviewed and approved the questions on the SDI survey for Maple Street closure. Because I don't really understand how this is something that the city could consider the closure or the validity of this survey without necessarily weighing in on the survey, because the questions were ridiculous. And I know this has been covered by other people, but one of the questions asked, how often do you drive on Maple Street? And I didn't really know how to answer that question because it's really never, because it's closed. So I just, I am concerned that when we get the results of this presentation, even if it sounds like everybody who answered this survey, they were pointing, I felt the questions were sort of pointed to get an answer. So, oh, you don't drive on Maple Street, therefore we can close it. Well, I don't drive on Maple Street because it's closed. If it were open, I would be driving on Maple Street. So I think the questions probably weren't the right questions. So I just want to point that out. The traffic study, have they assessed the impact of diverting traffic from Maple Street to Beechwood and Summit Avenue? Because I've noticed that circle by the train station has a ton of cars. It's a lot more waiting for whether pedestrians to cross, and then there's just a lot more backlog of traffic because Maple Street is closed. Also wondering whether the upcoming presentation will compare the revenue from parklets to what we earn for each paid parking spot. It's a revenue question for the city. And then, has anyone considered the impact of closing Maple Street once we add 100 or more vehicles around the corner when the Broad Street West building is constructed? Because I feel like we're looking at something before assessing even what the Broad Street West building is going to look like and what the impact of that traffic could be on Maple Street. It's right around the corner. Finally, during the November 2021 election, a number of candidates brought up Broad Street West and foresaw that this would be an important topic for Summit. In my view of how this was addressed, I thought some council members dismissed those concerns. And when the plans were unveiled a few months later, there was a lot of public feedback, as you all know, hours and hours of public comment. We have not received an update in a while, and this is an important election issue. When will the public be privy to the Broad Street West redesign?
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Gil Orman,
My wife and I live at 45 Wallace Road, and we are both very opposed to the closing of Maple Street. And I want to say that at the outset. I was here in May when you passed an ordinance to close it, at least until the end of November. And SDI, at that time, favored the closure. So the survey is going to tell them what they want to hear. I served on SDI for 10 years, and I enjoyed my time, and it's a great organization. They don't call the shots. The public calls the shots. And you heard from the public tonight, and from both sides, and the public is generally not in favor of closing Maple Street, maybe during the pandemic, but not otherwise. And what I can't understand from a legal standpoint is when you pass the ordinance to say that this is a pedestrian mall, these two sections of Maple Street, I looked into it, and the ordinance that you have to pass, which you did, findings necessary for the adoption of an ordinance to create a pedestrian mall. There are 4 or 5 things. One of them, nobody in this room, including you, with a straight face can say it's true. And yet you did. And here it is. Must find the continued unlimited use of the street or part thereof by private vehicles may constitute a hazard to the health and safety of pedestrians. I've lived in Summit for over 70 years. Maple Street has always been a street, and it's been one of the 2 ways to get into Summit from the other side of town, on the other side of the tracks. And it's been over 100 years. It's been a road. Hasn't been a hazard to, it's things like this that make you wonder. This isn't a pedestrian mall by the standards of the state statute. You can't tell me that it's going to continued use, unlimited use of Maple Street or any part thereof by private vehicles will constitute a hazard to the health and safety of pedestrians. It's not true. You can't find that. If you find that, I have a lot in Arizona. Number 2 is SDI. And I was, as I said, was on SDI. It's a great organization. They're not going to call the shot on this. They already said they were in favor of this without doing a survey.
Mr. Orrin, your time is up. If you could
Okay.
wrap up, please.
I have wrapped up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to clarify, SEI is not calling the shots. They're doing the survey. They've done the survey. They've done the study. They're going to present it to us, and we will be making a decision. So I just want to reiterate that. Come on up.
the boss.
Fran Orrin, 45 Wallace Road.
Good evening.
I'm very upset about the closure of Maple Street. I think that many, many more of the Summit residents are inconvenienced by that closure than enjoy outdoor dining. It's caused me to go to New Providence and the Hickory Tree Mall more and more as the parking spaces get eaten up. And I think someone said that we were hoping to have a European flavor. Well, I think it is a mess. It looks helter-skelter, and those orange blocks or whatever they are really should be painted red. And I hope that Maple Street is kept open and not just temporarily. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good thing we feel alike.
Okay, come on up, sir.
Hi, Eric Kerzlaski, 169 Broad Street. I have a question for you, Council President, for the city solicitor. Would like to understand this evening the role of council member as it relates to private citizen versus performance of duties as a council member. Why I think this is especially relevant this evening, the political war games that have occurred over the course of the last couple weeks are absolutely disgusting in this town. I will say I'm a Democrat. I'm ashamed to admit that, standing in a group of Democrats in front of me. I largely probably have a lot of the same opinions on a state and national level, but I think what's happening here within town and council is, again, absolutely disgusting. If I look at some of the commentary that's been put online, there was an individual, a resident, who had posted a letter online. Council President, you had thanked the individual for posting this letter online. This posting insinuated the persistence of Trumpism in our community. Another resident, anti-choice, anti-vax, anti-trans, anti-gay, the push to keep whitewashing our history of book banning, and has become the platform of the GOP. Summit is a small number of small districts in the state, et cetera, et cetera. I think you can understand where I'm going with this. I know you look absolutely baffled. I would love to hear either from the mayor or the city solicitor. I think the council here, it's quite obvious that representing in the position and in the capacity, if you're in July 4th, if you're over at Memorial Field as a group of individuals, are you a private citizen or are you a council member? When you're operating online through a Summit Council Facebook page, are you operating as a private citizen or a council member? So I'd appreciate if you can answer those questions this evening.
Okay, so, sir, what you just read was not what I wrote. I did post a letter that someone wrote, but that is not an official council page. There is no such thing, and I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Jacoby to address. But our Facebook pages that we as council members maintain are as candidates or politicians. They are, to my understanding, not the official. Not an official organ of the city government.
Well, I mean, the official social media pages that the city has, they have official social media pages. The one thing, and I haven't read any of these things, so I'm just going to tell you generally what governs all this. It's called the First Amendment. So whether you're a sitting council person or President of the United States or a U.S. Senator, or a private citizen, people have First Amendment rights. They can say things, people say things, and often people don't like what they said, but that is, grounded in our Constitution is the right of free speech. And so I can't opine as to what individuals have said, but just because you're an elected official doesn't give up your free speech rights whatsoever, just as a private citizen doesn't have it. There's different standards. For example, if a public official is defamed, the standard for that lawsuit is much higher. It's called actual malice. If a public official defames a private citizen who's not a public figure, it's a lower standard threshold. But I can't opine on that, but people do not give up their First Amendment rights because they're elected. And you can see that across the country in every type of race, on the national level, on the local level, et cetera.
Yeah, and I would like to think in Summit we're better than that. Completely understand First Amendment rights.
Sir.
If I think about, you cut me off. My 3 minutes wasn't over. So
Fine.
if I look at the New Jersey state of government, council impartiality, I'm just personally as a resident, I'm very, very concerned. A member of council shall impartially hear and decide on all matters that come before the council. A member should perform his or her duties without bias or prejudice. A member shall not, in the performance of council duties by words or conduct, manifest bias or prejudice, including but not limited to bias or prejudice based on race, sex, religion, national origin, disability, age, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status. So if we want to start getting into the nuances of First Amendment, that's absolutely okay. I do think it's incredibly misleading for the general public. Margie Fox, Summit Council Ward 2, that residents don't interpret that as an extension of your duties as council president. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Fred Clemens. I live on Orchard Street. And pretty much everything I was going to say has been covered because of this situation. But my main concern is pedestrian traffic, motor vehicle traffic, and bicycle traffic. And with the sidewalks being overrun with tables and chairs and everything, pedestrian traffic has been restricted to a couple of feet of width in some spaces. I mean, it's still there. So you either make it so this thing is going to be permanent, the street closure is going to be permanent, or and accommodate, or don't close it at all and go back to normal. It shouldn't be about, making it convenient for restaurants to have more table area. Have it so it works for the pedestrians too. Because sometimes some places I keep forgetting names now. On Union Place, you have the sidewalk there, you have tables coming out from the businesses, so you only have this much space to walk through. So it's not like it used to be. Sidewalks were made for pedestrians, not for tables and chairs. You can eat outside anywhere you want, but it shouldn't have to be driven by the dining areas, so they overtake the sidewalks, and meanwhile the cars are overtaking the roadways. And it shouldn't be like that, personally. And I brought this up the last time I was here a month ago, and like I said, my main concern is about pedestrian traffic, motor vehicle traffic, and bicycle traffic. And just standing on the corner of Union Place and Summit Avenue, I've seen so many of the rules being broken day after day, hour after, minute by minute. Pedestrians who don't press the cross signal, cars rolling through the stop sign. And it's not just there. I've witnessed cars rolling through stop signs everywhere else too. Either you enforce the law the way it was written, or don't bother having stop signs there to begin with. It's been known that this has been going on for a long time, and it's just been getting worse. So it should be either one way or the other. Take away the stop sign, turn them into yield signs. Because cars just roll right past the stop sign itself, right to the edge of the roadway, and then decide if they're going to go or not. And if they don't see anybody right away, they're just going to continue rolling right through the traffic, right through onto the roadway. And this has got to be addressed just as much as the closure. Even with regard to the Maple Street light, I brought up that for each time, the light is green on Springfield Avenue for 45 seconds, but when it's red, it's for 30 seconds.
Sir, your time is up. If you could please
either way,
wrap
you
up.
can't go right or left.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good evening, Delia Hamlet. A couple of questions just stemming from the audience and speaking with neighbors. When will the public hear their answers to all of these questions tonight?
There was a lot of questions that.
Because I have asked some questions in the past and I never got an answer. So I'm just wondering, when will these people get an answer to every single question? Because I think that's the frustration in the audience. It's just a question.
Some of these cannot be answered because there are things that are, a lot of these were about Maple Street, things that are not in our control that will not happen till after the December 6th presentation. We don't have the answers to what the the questions that were asked, the surveys, all of those pieces of information we cannot provide now.
I just don't know.
Yeah.
Right yet.
But we don't have the answers to some of those questions. The ones we can answer, we will answer. And if there's something
But in
that
general, when, it doesn't even have to be about this meeting, when does the public hear the answers to the questions that people ask up here? I'm just...
To be honest, this is public comment period. It's really not public question and answer period.
That's kind of what it seems.
But we try to answer whatever we can answer. Some of the questions are not possible to answer. And,
Understand.
If people have questions, really the best way to get a question answered is to send an email, because we do respond, and they go to committees and they get responses. But when you ask a list of questions, we do our best to answer what we can.
I understand. I wouldn't be able to answer all of them either. I had asked a question a few weeks ago, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, through you, Council President. I had asked whoever you want to ask, we kept saying we had to do Broad Street West because of the finances, and if we could do a more detailed presentation for the residents regarding that comment. And I was wondering if that has been discussed. I can repeat it if you would like.
No, I've heard the question. You know, it is something that, Michael Rogers has done at numerous times. He has made presentations about finances, and will continue to provide that information.
So would we agree to say that we have to do Broad Street West because of the finances, and that we have a revenue and debt problem? Is that safe to say?
I'm going to turn that over to you, Michael.
The way that question is phrased, it's not a simple yes or no answer. There's many considerations, as we know. We've talked about a lot of different reasons why Broad Street West is, why we want to do it. Why I think there's still many questions to be addressed. Finance is one component of it, and that's where I'll leave the answer.
Because when I'm speaking with residents, I have to explain it in a digestible manner, and they're asking me questions, so I'd like to answer them. And so if I could just pass that on as a candidate, I think that's one of the frustrating things.
I think the best bet for you is to make an appointment to talk to Michael and to understand.
We've spoken plenty. I was just wondering from the council.
Okay.
Secondly, or last, I guess, Martinsbrook Park, who maintains that in the city? I've had some, I actually walked it the other day with a few residents, and the branches and everything are all over the place, so I was just wondering whose responsibility is that?
Aaron? Mr. Schrager, do you want to answer that one?
It would be the city responsibility, so Public Works.
We want to take a look at that one. Canoe Brook Parkway, I know we've had a lot of traffic, but when I speak with the residents down there, they're frustrated over not knowing when that road is going to be closed. And I think we're all dealing with it with the traffic and the construction, but is there a way to communicate with the residents when there is going to be construction so that they can move their cars beforehand?
I think it's dependent on whether we know. We tell you what we know, but the county doesn't always tell us things.
But don't we have to we have to get the police involved in order to do that?
No, they hire the police.
They hire it through.
Yes, we
Okay.
don't do that.
And often, recently, the county sheriff's office closed things down. We had no idea what was going to happen.
But we use our police, don't we?
No, we don't use our
Not
police.
always, sometimes, but not always. And as I just said, it was the county sheriff's office, and they had their people close down the roads.
When they tell us, we always tell.
Summit Police were on my street, I'm just saying.
But could they have been hired outside of, I don't know how that.
They're generally hired outside. There's a program where when contractors are closing streets, they go onto it, and you can get Summit Police, but if it's a county road, generally, there's all kinds of jurisdictional issues through PBAs, but if it's a county road, it generally goes to county law enforcement. If it's a state road, it goes to state troopers.
It doesn't mean, though, that the police department knows. They're off-duty officers.
They're off-duty officers.
Correct. But they're still scheduling through our police department now.
They're scheduling through a program.
What is that program?
I forget the name of it. It's a program that a lot of different municipalities use.
Do you know,
and
Chief?
state.
Okay. And Ms. Hamlin, I think we've well gone over our time.
Through you, Council President, with
Yes.
the road jobs that you're talking about, they will contract with the Summit Police Department on a lot of the jobs that occur in Summit. We'll supply the officers. If we don't have officers available, it'll default to the jobs in blue, I believe it's called. And that could be filled by county officers, Union County Sheriffs, Union County Police Department. State Police, I've been noticing that they've been working in town. Sometimes we don't even know when they're here. They would be hired by the contractor who was working on that particular job. Just yesterday, I saw 2 jobs where the state police were working, and that job didn't come through the city, and the police department wasn't aware of it until our traffic sergeant was going around monitoring each construction site, and he came across it. So to answer your question, in summary, most of the jobs are filled by Summit officers. When we can't fill them, they'll go to the jobs in blue, and county police and sheriffs will fill them. The state police, I don't know how that works. They don't come through us or the Jobs in Blue program, I don't believe. They are hired by whoever that particular contractor was.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Felmett.
Good evening. I didn't have anything prepared like others, but I heard a lot of good, compelling comments about different topics that I've been interested in over the last couple well, longer than several months, so I just wanted to knock them out as quick as possible in my 3 minutes here. One is, I just heard some comments, very timely, related to emailing you guys, the council city administrator, about things and getting responses. So after the last council meeting, the Finger Lot, the privately owned cut-through piece of property that goes directly through Sub-District 3, it was made aware, I didn't know, Councilmember Vartan responded to an email saying that it was privately owned, so that's public information. But basically, I emailed after the last meeting that night on 10/18, asking what's the impact to the actual development. There was one building at the time that was being sent to for amended redevelopment agreement. I followed up 4 or 5 times after that, asking what the impact was, and I didn't receive a response until 9 days later, which came from Michael Rogers, which I'll just read it because I think it would benefit everyone, the information. He said, in part, I will reiterate, there isn't a yes or no answer, which he said to somebody else, but then he went on to say, I'll reiterate what I stated at the last council meeting. The redeveloper and private and property owner of the driveway land, in quotes, Finger Lot, have been discussing a property transfer agreement for some time. Both parties have a mutual understanding and an intention to enter into a purchase sale agreement, PSA, for the driveway property. Under the old proposed single building development project, the city would have not, in capital letters, finalized a redevelopment agreement. That's bizarre to me. Maybe I'm just not following all the information. I try to do the best I can, but I'd like to hear more about that. He said with the developers until the driveway property was under contract or a ground lease agreement. The redevelopers were well aware of the position throughout our planning process. I'll state the obvious. Without the driveway property, the redevelopers would not be legally able to build on the driveway without property rights to do so. At this time, the city and redevelopers are considering a development project on city-owned property with and without the driveway property. So maybe that's where the 2 buildings is coming into play that people are proposing. I don't know. And he wrote, to be clear, a development project is feasible without the driveway. Best regards, Michael. So I think that was really helpful, and I appreciate the information. I think it would have been really helpful to be shared during the process. There was hundreds of hours and thousands of people that have showed their attention to this process. They're doing their best they can, at least people that I've talked to, in terms of trying to figure out what's going on, how we can be better informed, better engaged, better involved in this process. When it comes to work, when it comes to school, we teach these very simple things that, the more information that we can all obtain, the better decisions we can make as a group, both you guys and residents as well. So,
Mr. Feldman, I would ask you to wrap up, please.
Sure. Also, I'd just like to ask one last question, and that's in relation to the short-term bonding notes that went out last October for $30 million, and that was in part due to the financing of the Firehouse. I'd like to know if that has expired, if it's been refinanced. Apologies if I missed it. If not, when will it be refinanced? What are the terms? Is there a call option? And what's the interest rate? Thank you.
Would you like to take that? Okay, we'll have our CFO, Tammy Baldwin.
Through you, Council President. Sure. I can email you the interest rate. I don't recall it offhand. I've sold another note, and we did bond for the note that was outstanding from last October. We recently bonded that. So we're permanently out to bond. There's probably a call date towards the end of the term. I'd have to look in the documents also for that. So I can certainly email that information. I just don't have the particulars in my head for that.
Okay, thank you. And City Administrator Rogers, would you like to address the Finger Lot issue?
Council President, I'm not sure how much more I can say about it, other than I don't know what else to say. Maybe I'll follow up with Mr. Feldman.
Okay.
Just on something else he brought up. So.
Okay. All right. Good evening, Ms. Gagnon.
Good evening, Dory Gagnon. I'm going to try to make this fast. I'd like to have an update on the Financial Committee, please. And following up with Mrs. Zahn's question with the Broad Street West update, if there's any updates with that. I'd also like to invite everybody here, council members, to the Residents for Summit Town Hall tomorrow evening. There's 2 meetings, 6:30 and 7:30 at the Elks Lodge, 40 Maple Street. All are welcome. We've made a 3D model that we would like to show you an idea of what the Residents for Summit would like as an idea of what Broad Street West would be. All are welcome again, 6:30. There's 2 showings.
We received
6:30 and
emails,
7:30.
all of us were
Oh, great.
invited.
Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Okay,
And,
wonderful.
but most of us are attending.
Wonderful, great. So I watched a movie with my kids this weekend, Footloose. It was great to have some family time. And I saw some similarities with Footloose and what's happening here in Summit. Can anybody guess? I'm like the Kevin Bacon of Summit. Okay, except I don't have his moves, I don't have his dance moves. I try to think I do. Footloose references the 1980s Cultural Revolution with the examination of the religious authority. And here in Summit, we're witnessing this political polarization in a similar small town. Here in Summit, we're not being faced with a ban of music or dancing, but so much more. It started with the gas leaf blowers during COVID. Many spoke up and council didn't listen. They ignored the hundreds of people who asked for a compromise, and we were ignored. And gas leaf blowers were banned, just like dancing and music. And then it continued to Broad Street West, and the divisiveness escalated, and hundreds showed up. We held a rally, we made lawn signs, we showed up, and every single council meeting we asked, and you guys listened, but we had to revisit Broad Street West, and months of people showing up to get your attention. So let's fast forward to today, while we're all here again. We're talking about Maple Street, and you say we're not gonna have a permanent closure, which I thank you for, but we're gonna have something on Maple Street. So we formed SOS, which is Save Our Summit, which is Save Our Summit Downtown. We're trying to come up with some kind of idea of what's happening downtown. 69 orange cones were up. They've now come down. And I'm coming up with these ideas and scratching my head, and I'm like this Kevin Bacon trying to say, stop, and you guys have to listen, because there's always hundreds of us here, every council meeting, and you guys don't want this. And I'm gonna start dancing, I'm gonna bring my music, and I'm gonna say, okay, stop. We have to come up with an agreement, and we have to stop arguing, and we need to say, you know what, a compromise, right? So we don't want a permanent closure, but we don't want March till the end of November either, that's too long. So we have to say, you know what, I met with Mr. Miniger, and we're trying to come up with an idea. But then at the SDI meeting, it's either we have dining on the sidewalk or the parklets. Well, that doesn't make sense because we have no parking. And as my husband mentioned, we can come up with some revenue ideas. Let's tap the resources we have in our town with our financial people. We have one sitting behind me as well.
Ms. Gagnon.
So I'm going to wrap it up.
Yep, please.
So I'm asking you to say, you know what, I'm going to either start dancing again or we come up with a compromise. And I think that's a good resource. So thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Kevin McGoey, Woodland Avenue. I've heard something said constantly, or many times. I heard it in the candidate debate. I've heard it since then, and I would like for it to stop because it's incorrect information and it's kind of another scary language that someone uses. It's in reference to the Broad Street West property. Councilman Danny O'Sullivan, during the debate, said if this property doesn't get developed under a redevelopment plan or under this redevelopment plan, and it's sold to a private developer, the city loses all control. We have no say in what goes on there. And that is 100% factually inaccurate. The city controls every piece of property in this city through zoning. Danny is on the planning board, he should understand this. I explained this to him. I sent him a message. He didn't respond to it. I had the same explanation to Greg, and then Greg said the same thing as Danny at the Historic Preservation Commission meeting. And I think he even adds, oh, if we don't do this, it's just, you're going to have primrose. We'd have primrose there, which is completely inaccurate. Never mind the fact that unlike other pieces of property in Summit, this is unique in that Summit owns it. So we can do whatever we want with it. We could enter into an agreement with the developer to do something with it. We could do another redevelopment plan. We could have a sale contingent upon it. We can change the zoning in it. The building, the owner of this would not complain. So we have an enormous amount of control over what happens here, whether it's under redevelopment plan or not under redevelopment plan. So I would just like that kind of fear-mongering to stop, because it's inaccurate information, and it only serves one purpose, and it's to scare people. Another thing, at 2 meetings ago on October 6th, I think 43 minutes in, I can play it for you, because I clipped it, I sent it to Danny as well. Greg said that either the previous city council meeting or this city council meeting, you would have the affordable housing attorney explain to us in a presentation what our obligation is under the settlement agreement. I think this is crucial for us to understand exactly what our obligation is, because back in March 4th, the first time I ever talked to you guys about it, there were 2 reasons why you had to do this. The first was you needed to do it for financial reasons, which is not accurate. I know that I don't want to put Michael Rogers on the spot up here, you're his bosses and everything else, but it's very clear that you do not need to do this out of any kind of fiscal necessity. And the second thing was, we have to build, come hell or high water, 50 affordable housing units. If that is the case, then we better make sure we get it. And I don't know that it is or not. I've spoke to Joe Burgess at length, and I think he explains it pretty thoroughly. It's actually in the summary, you can understand it. But I want to understand.
Wrap up, please.
Yeah, I just want to understand why we were promised this, and then what happened. You've certainly talked to the affordable housing attorney.
Why don't you let me answer them, because your time is up. And
Okay, well, usually I don't even get answers to my questions.
Okay, well, I will answer that I wasn't at the meeting on the 6th.
Right. Well, emails even.
No, why don't
Everything.
you let me finish my sentence, please? So what I was going to say is that we have, on November 14th, we will have, which is the next council meeting, it's 2 weeks from today.
Right.
No, it's a Monday, I take that back. We will have our affordable housing attorney come and do a presentation about affordable housing.
Do you know what it is?
Do I know what is?
Do you know what our obligation is? Have you spoken to them?
Yes, I do, but.
Okay, can you share that with us?
No, I'm going to let the affordable housing attorney take care of that, because she's the expert on it.
Well,
and
you
it's-
had no problem expressing
Sir,
before exactly what our obligation was.
I am not going to do that tonight. It's already 9:30, we haven't started our business. This is not going to be, we're not going to do that.
Right. The last meeting, it suddenly, for the first time I heard the words, it's very complicated and hard to understand, where every meeting
Sir,
before that it wasn't.
your time is up,
No, I know,
Mr.
we're just
Bedoya.
engaging.
All right, are there any other public comments? Okay, so we have a couple of letters?
Yes, we have
Okay.
2 emails that were received, Council President.
Okay.
The first one from Bill Callahan. Mr. O'Sullivan now states that he worked at the NYSE for 5 years. He initially listed working at Direct Brokerage, Inc. and Inline Brokers, Inc. for less than 4 years. Both firms were delisted by the NYSE. Which resume is correct?
Mr. O'Sullivan, would you like to answer that, please?
Sure. Thank you, Council President, and I appreciate Mr. Callahan's question. I did work at the New York Stock Exchange for 2 different firms for a total of 4 years. I reached out to Mr. Callahan this morning to make things clear for him. If Mr. Callahan wants more information, he now has my direct number, and he should feel free to call me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Okay, and we have another one?
Yes, Molly Adams on Mealy Place. I'm writing to ask for information at the specific date when the Morris Water Main project will be completed, and when the water company's contractor will no longer be using the Marco Polo parking lot as a staging area for its heavy equipment. Since the city authorized night construction on Labor Day, we who live in the area, in the neighborhood, have been abused 5 nights a week between the hours of 2:30 in the morning to 4:30 in the morning by loud bangs, backup beeps, and even jackhammers as they close up shop in the parking lot. It is unbearable and a continuing zoning violation of the property's legal nonconforming use as a restaurant parking lot, and it is not, in caps, a necessity that construction in the street have an immediately adjacent staging area for heavy equipment that interferes with our right to enjoy a decent night's sleep. I respectfully request, on behalf of the neighborhood, some specific answers, not more wishy-washy statements about how the project is necessary.
Okay. We hear, we've received some comments about this, and we do sympathize with what's going on. This is, been a very difficult project, and it's been a long project, but it's one that does need to happen. And I'm going to ask Mr. Schrager to come up and address some of the specifics.
Thank you, Council President, through you. Last week, New Jersey American Water gave us a date of November 18th that they were looking to finish the project. This morning, they confirmed that date, so the project hasn't slipped at all in terms of schedule, which is good. In regards to the use of the parking lot, that property was previously approved as a commercial use through the site plan process, so it is an approved use. But through the Board of Public Utilities, utility companies have the right to go over local land use laws for items such as health and safety, such as water supply, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, so with that, I'm going to close the public comment period, and we'll move on to ordinances for hearing. So we have our first finance ordinance. Madam Clerk? Maybe we'll give people a moment to move. Yeah. Do a 7th inning stretch? Yes.
Can we take 5?
You want to take 2 minutes? Can we take a 5 minute? Okay. We're going to take a short recess, just let everyone stretch.
All right, you guys ready? No problem. Okay, we're going to get restarted now. So we have an ordinance for hearing, and Madam Clerk, could you please read the ordinance?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance number 22-3266, bond ordinance funding and emergency appropriation, providing for the local unit's allocable share of the unfunded portion of Phase 1 of the flood mitigation facilities project of the joint meeting of Essex and Union Counties, by and in the city of Summit, County of Union, New Jersey, appropriating $2 million therefore, and authorizing issuance of $2 million in bonds or notes to finance the cost thereof.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilmember Vartan?
Yes, thank you, Council President. This is a bond ordinance for the purpose of funding the emergency appropriation that provides for Summit's share of Phase 1 of the joint meetings flood mitigation facilities project. Again, a summary of this situation. The joint meeting is our wastewater collection and treatment facility and is one of the oldest examples of shared services in the state. In 2012, the flooding from Superstorm Sandy threatened to shut down operations of the facility, which would have been devastating. The joint meeting went out to bid on a multi-phase flood mitigation project. Summit has taken steps to fund our share of the first several phases. Due to the pandemic, delays in the State Office of Environmental Protection, and rising costs, the lowest bid is much more expensive than anticipated. Summit must increase our share of the funding. So in a resolution, Summit approved emergency appropriations for that purpose. The ordinance we're having a hearing on tonight is the actual bond ordinance to fund Summit's increased portion of the project. 90% of this cost is expected to be reimbursed by FEMA. If this ordinance is adopted, there will be a resolution at our council meeting on November 14th to end the emergency related to this. I move to open the hearing on this ordinance.
I second it.
Okay, so I'm going to open the hearing now. Are there any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those, roll call? Oh, no,
You're going to close the hearing?
Closing the hearing. I haven't, it's getting late. And then we're going to do ordinances for final consideration. Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 22-3266, bond ordinance funding and emergency appropriation, providing for the local unit's allocable share of the unfunded portion of Phase 1 of the flood mitigation facilities project of the joint meeting of Essex and Union Counties, by and in the city of Summit, County of Union, New Jersey, appropriating $2 million therefore, and authorizing issuance of $2 million in bonds or notes to finance the cost thereof.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. This is the bond ordinance related to the joint meetings flood mitigation facilities project. As we just held a hearing, I move to adopt this ordinance.
I second it.
Okay, could we have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Ms. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Mr. Miniger?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Fox?
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. We're moving on to ordinances for introduction. Madam Clerk, could you please read the title?
ID number 9970, an ordinance amending the Code, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 4, Departments Created, Section 2-15, Department of Police, subsections 2-15.9, eligibility for promotional examinations, and subsection 2-15.10, promotions, and 2-15.11, qualifications of superior officers.
Okay, Councilmember Levine, would you like to introduce this ordinance?
Yes, thank you, Council President. I'd like to introduce this ordinance, which serves to codify the existing internal promotional process within the police department, as well as amend some aspects. The process is based on merit, experience, education, demonstrated ability, examinations, and a written submission. I move this ordinance for introduction.
I second.
Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Mr. Miniger?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Fox?
Aye. Okay, motion carries, and the hearing will be on Monday, November 14th. And now we'll move on to resolutions. Finance resolutions first. Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. This is resolution number 9944. This resolution does a couple things. First, it approves Summit's responses to the State of New Jersey's Best Practice Inventory Program. Second, it certifies the occurrence of a public meeting to discuss said inventory, which is happening right now. So 3 things of note. 1, generally speaking, when council takes actions, they fall into one of 3 categories: emergent, compulsory, or strategic. Emergencies include things like unexpected repairs of facilities, storm or disaster response, things related to the pandemic. Strategic initiatives are things related to the master plan, and compulsory are things like this, things that are required of us by the state government. Second, the best practices inventory is meant to be provocative and challenge municipalities to adopt a range of measures that improve financial accountability and transparency. And part of the deal is that this inventory is part of the equation that determines a municipality's final allocation of 2 state tax relief programs. Third, I'm glad to report Summit has already adopted and implemented most of these best practices. We consistently score highly on the portion of this inventory that is scored, and this year is no exception. We scored more than enough points to receive our full share of state aid. So I'm thankful for the work of our finance team, especially CFO Tammy Baldwin, and I move to adopt this resolution.
I second it.
Okay, are there any comments from members of council? Okay, comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to finance number 2.
Should be 2.
Okay, just, all
Not
right.
3.
All right, we'll do 2 and then we'll do 3.
Yeah.
Keeping everybody on their toes.
Yes, go
And
ahead.
this
Councilmember
is,
Vartan.
just to be clear, this is 9949. This resolution authorizes the cancellation of the balance, nope. Okay.
Back.
Yep, this is, okay.
Transfer appropriation.
Transfer of appropriations.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. This resolution authorizes the cancellation of the balance of funds for various nope. Where are we?
Authorizing.
Transfer of
Appropriations.
Okay, transfer of appropriations within the 2022 operating budget from accounts with a balance to those with insufficient funds. This is a common occurrence, but is only allowed at the beginning and end of the fiscal year. The total amount of this transfer is $178,598, and I move to adopt this resolution.
I second it.
Are there any comments from members of council?
Yes, just a quick question, Council President.
Of course.
These transfers of appropriations, are they ever so large that the city has, or you realize there's an adjustment that's needed, basically? Or is it always vary by year?
The short answer is, well,
Why don't
so
we-
what's happening here is we're moving money that's within the operating budget from accounts that have a surplus to those that have insufficient balance. So in this case, there's a few specific lines of the budget that need money in order to pay the bills for the end of the year. It does not, however, change the overall total of the operating budget. How's that, Tammy? Did I redeem myself from that ridiculous
Yes.
performance a minute ago? Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, are there any other
There's
comments
a-
or questions?
No, you
go
made
ahead.
me think of a question.
Oh, damn it.
So if you're moving it out of surplus and paying, you're moving it to the operating budget?
No.
No.
Accounts with a surplus to accounts that are insufficient.
Okay. And so, through you, Council President, sorry. So, how much is in surplus, and do we put that money back into surplus?
It's not actually in surplus. Let's let
Okay.
our CFO take this one.
Through you, Council President.
Yes, of course.
So what happens is you have the overall budget, and as Councilman Vartan said, it doesn't change the total of the budget. But, for example, we're moving $25,000 to gasoline. That's because what we anticipated and we budgeted in the gasoline line item is not sufficient for what the costs have been. They've been excessive this year. So where we have, for example, maybe a vacancy that hasn't been filled or somebody retired at a higher position, I may have some extra money in that salary line, so I may move it over to gasoline so I can get those monies paid. So it's all within the appropriations that are made in the budget. You're just kind of transferring from line to line. It's to call it surplus. It's not the surplus that we traditionally speak about when we're anticipating some surpluses or revenue in the budget. This is just extra funds in a particular line item due to not spending them and maybe not a need for them because of some unforeseen circumstance, and moving them to a different line because of another unforeseen circumstance where it didn't have enough money.
I'm clear.
Is that okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any other comments or questions from members of council? Comments from the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Oh, that's a roll call. Okay, Madam Clerk?
Ms. Allen?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
Aye.
Dr. Levine?
Aye.
Mr. Miniger?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Fox?
Aye. Okay, the motion carries, and we'll move on to finance number 3. Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. This one is 9965. This resolution authorizes the cancellation of the balance of funds for various capital projects that have been completed. This is a housekeeping resolution and a good accounting practice that will reduce our outstanding bonds or notes that have been authorized but not issued. I move to adopt this resolution.
I second it.
Are there any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we'll move on to capital projects. We already did capital projects number 1, so we'll move on to capital projects number 2. Councilmember O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Council President. This is ID number 9945 to declare a vacancy for a part-time property maintenance inspector. As we discussed in the closed session, the city needs to declare a vacancy for a part-time maintenance inspector because of the pending retirement of Leon Portine. Mr. Portine worked in various capacities for the city for 46 years. Just incredible. And we wish him well in retirement, and I move this resolution.
Are there any comments? Oh, wait, we need a second. Councilmember Levine?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Okay, are there any comments from members of council? Okay, comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we'll move on to capital projects number 3. Councilmember O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Council President. This is ID number 9870 to declare a vacancy in the Department of Community Services, Division of Public Works, Recreation, Parks, and Shade Tree Unit. As we discussed in the closed session, the city needs to declare a vacancy in the Recreation, Parks, and Shade Tree Unit due to the upcoming retirement of Assistant Foreman Thomas Linaw. Mr. Linaw worked for the city for over 25 years, and we wish him well. I move this resolution.
I second.
Are there any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move on to law and labor. Councilmember Hairston?
Thank you, Council President. I'm introducing Resolution ID number 9958 for approval. This resolution is to grant a person-to-person liquor license transfer, Marco Polo Restaurant and Tavern, Inc., to Temple Hill Associates, LLC. On March 3rd, pursuant to a bidding procedure order, an auction was conducted after Marco Polo filed voluntary petitions for relief under Chapter 11, and went to bankruptcy court for the District of New Jersey, where Temple Hill Associates was the successful bidder of the said auction. And Temple Hill Associates is qualified to be licensed according to all standards established by Title 33 of the New Jersey statutes. Whew. So I introduce this resolution for approval to transfer the liquor license from Marco Polo to Temple Hill.
And I second.
Are there any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we have one more law and labor resolution. Councilmember Hairston.
Thank you, Council President. ID number 9942 to authorize sick leave with pay for a DCS Public Works employee. And this was pending our closed session discussion, where we discussed that this employee is having surgery and has all of the authorized time to have this extended leave granted, and we wish them a speedy recovery. I introduce this for approval.
I second.
Any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're moving on to safety and health. Councilmember Levine.
Thank you, Council President. The first resolution, which is Resolution 9957, authorizes 2 change orders as part of the fire headquarters project. The first change order is in the amount of $2,654.57. It involves adding some additional concrete piers necessary to support the foundation. The second change order, which is in the amount of $46,122.20, involves 3 areas. The first is new hardware, which includes some locks and other mechanisms to improve the training process. Also in the second change order is adding rigid insulation designed to increase energy efficiency. It's more cost-effective to put in this insulation now to support the radiant heat system than to utilize higher quantities of energy down the line to warm the building. The third part of this change order involves stormwater redirection. While excavating beneath the parking lot, an active stormwater retention basin was discovered that wasn't on any prior survey, so no one knew that it existed. And because this is a working basin, it was collecting and diverting a quantity of stormwater. So now in its stead, an equivalent stormwater management system needs to be installed. I move to adopt this resolution.
A second.
Are there any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we have one last safety and health resolution.
Yep.
Councilmember Levine.
That is Resolution 9968, which authorizes a grant application submission to Citizens Philanthropic Foundation for the amount of $50,000 to be put towards the Firehouse headquarters project. If awarded, these funds would support the city's efforts to create a physical fitness center, a wellness room, installation of training props, and a fire prevention education room to engage the public at fire headquarters. I move to adopt this resolution.
I second.
Okay, are there any comments from members of council?
Yes.
Go ahead, Councilmember
Through you,
Hairston.
Council President, I just want to thank our chief for seeing this through. I know you talked about this early on as something that would be important to have in the firehouse, and that you were able to work with Millennium to get a grant for it. This is good news.
Great. All right. Are there any other comments? Councilmember Allen.
I want to say I agree with Councilwoman Hairston, so we should be definitely donating to the bricks too.
Okay. Well, we've got our forms, and you want to do a pitch for the bricks?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that it's important. The city is spending over $15 million to build this building, but we've all felt strongly at council that it was important that the community have an opportunity to also kind of pitch in a little bit to the extent that they can. The 3 main areas are the living area for the firefighters who are there waiting to run into fires when we're all running out. So while they're in the fire headquarters, waiting to be of service, it'd be really nice if we can thank them a little bit by having a decent place for them to be living. Number 2 is a physical fitness center, something, it's not going to be grand, but it's just an opportunity for them to exercise and stay fit, because we all want fit firefighters. And thirdly, sort of an historical small area where we can show artifacts and photos of the proud history of the Summit Fire Department. So people can buy a brick paver that will be on the outside of the building, on the ground, $250 up to $1,000. So 3 sizes. You can have engraved whatever you want. And I would encourage people to go to cityofsummit.org/firehouse. Yeah. Go to the city website page, and it's on the front page. But please feel free. And then if we raise $300,000, the total cost is $405,000. We have an anonymous donor who is willing to donate $100,000 if we raise $300,000. So we're getting there, and I know everyone on council is anxious to donate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So are there any comments from members of the public on this? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and I was wrong, there's one more safety and health resolution, 9975.
Yes.
Yes.
As discussed in closed session, this resolution confirms the mayor's appointment of Mr. David Silk to the Board of Health. He has extensive experience in healthcare management and will be a perfect addition to this board. I know the mayor is very enthusiastic about him, and David, if you're watching, congratulations. I move to adopt this resolution.
I second.
Are there any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So that concludes our regular agenda. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda, and I think, Mr. Miniger, do you have something that you would like to pull out of the consent agenda?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Council President. This is number 9956, and this resolution authorizes the use of the Summit Community Center for a free Thanksgiving Day luncheon for all community members in need of a Thanksgiving Day meal. This is the second time Summit is holding this luncheon, and it will take place from noon to 3 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, Thursday, November 24th. This event, serving more than 500 hot meals, is only made possible because of the generous help from Grace, the Summit Oaks Center, the Tiger Barron Foundation, Bristol Myers Squibb, and many, many dedicated volunteers. Anyone who wants to volunteer can contact David Guida at Summit's Department of Community Programs. Easiest way to do that is to go to summitcommunityprograms.com. And I move that we adopt this resolution.
I'll second that.
Okay. And did anyone have any comments on that?
I do. I just wanted to say, I was there last year, and it was the first time they ever did it. I didn't really know what to expect. It was absolutely lovely. There were flowers on all the tables. It was china and silverware and cloth napkins. Children had done all kinds, from the schools, had made placemats for all the tables. They had decorations all over. There was a piano player, I think, and a vocalist. Dozens and dozens of volunteers serving the food. And it was not just people that were people who had no place to go or who were in need. They came together as neighbors, talked to a couple women whose kids live in California, and given, COVID, they weren't flying out to California last year, Thanksgiving. So I was blown away with how really professional it was done. And I want to give a shout out to David Guida, because it was his baby. He pulled this together. But it was just way beyond my expectations. So,
Thank you. I think it also is intended to serve people who are working in the community
Yep.
that day. So if, police, fire, EMS, all those folks can, if they have a break, are able to come and get a Thanksgiving dinner. So I think it's a great community activity, and we're very fortunate. So with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And let's now, do I have a motion for the rest of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we have an item for discussion, action, or referral. Councilmember O'Sullivan, would you like to introduce it? And then we'll...
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Council President. As you said, it's a DAR, which is a discussion, action, or referral, and it is number 9969. This is a memo from Matt Delory, Summit's Municipal Housing Liaison, regarding municipalities filing appeals, seeking to compel the appointment of a new council on affordable housing, a new COA board, as required by the Fair Housing Act. We had a really good discussion on this item at the last closed session. Since then, council members have weighed in, and it was decided that we would approach the state in a more informal way. And so I'll throw it back to you to open this item for discussion, Council President.
Sure. Mr. Delory, would you like to come up and say anything, or are you just here to answer questions? Okay, great. So, so we spoke about this at the last council. Is there a problem?
No, sorry.
Okay. We spoke about this at the last closed session, and we had the attorney, Nancy Holm, come and talk to us about it. And I think I've now polled all the members of council, and I think the sense that we got was that there were informal measures that we could take before we would go to a litigation strategy, because of the costs of litigation and the possible risks of litigation, and not knowing what the likelihood of success on the merits would be, that we ought to be trying to engage both our contacts at the governor's office as well as possibly colleagues in other communities to see if we could work together. And then finally, also, I did speak to Councilmember Allen about what was going on at the assembly level and whether there would be something going on there that might be a way to get this addressed. So that's kind of where we landed, that at this point it seemed like it wasn't quite the time to do something like this. And I'll open it up to anyone else who'd like to say something. Councilmember Vartan.
Sure, I'll be quick, well, I'll try. I'm not in favor of the resolution that was outlined in the correspondence. I think it would be helpful if people are still watching at this point to just summarize the current situation, the reasons why I don't think this specific action makes sense right now, and what I think we should do instead. So first, the Council on Affordable Housing, COA, was created by the New Jersey Fair Housing Act to create and implement policy related to affordable housing in this state. In what's referred to as the Mount Laurel 4 decision, the state Supreme Court decided that COA was moribund, which is defined as in terminal decline, lacking viability. And since then, the courts have been administering affordable housing policy. Summit chose to voluntarily comply with the new process that was put in place by the courts. The fair share element and settlement with Fair Share Housing Center is the result of that participation. That agreement from 2015 outlines our responsibility as a community, but only for this housing cycle, which lasts until 2025. Nothing that we're discussing tonight changes the responsibility outlined in our current agreement, but after 2025, there will be a new responsibility under the next round. By law, COA still exists, and the governor could appoint members to it, or we could continue operating under this current framework. Either way, the City of Summit will have a new responsibility after 2025, and it can either be determined by COA, a bipartisan group of people with expertise in this area who would have to be appointed by the governor, or it can be decided under the current system administered by the courts. So the resolution submitted to us asks Summit to join in with 16 other municipalities in a lawsuit. The purpose of that suit would be to compel the governor to appoint members to COA. There are three main reasons why I don't think this is the right approach for Summit. First, it costs money, an unknown amount of money in legal fees. Second, highly skeptical as you are that this course of action could actually get the desired outcome. And third, the message that it sends, both to the governor himself, that suing somebody isn't necessarily the best way to get them to do what you want, and the message that it sends to the courts. Summit would essentially be joining together with a relatively small group of municipalities to go out on a limb for the benefit of all the other municipalities in the state. Some of those municipalities have viciously resisted building any affordable housing. They have attempted to fight any mandate whatsoever. That's not what we're doing here. Summit has been building affordable housing for years. Summit has voluntarily complied with the rules, and Summit is taking responsible and reasonable action toward increasing our affordable housing stock and rehabilitating existing affordable housing. So that brings me to what I think we should do instead, which also I agree with you, Council President. There are more than 500 municipalities in this state. All of them are facing similar challenges. We should work together with other municipalities who share our values, who recognize the importance of doing our part when it comes to affordable housing, but also believe that COA should be reinstated. We should join together with those municipalities and then advocate. Use the power of our voices together to advocate that the governor appoint qualified members to COA as soon as possible so that the creation, implementation, and administration of affordable housing policy returns to the legislative and executive branches of our government instead of the judicial branch. So that's my thinking about it. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilmember Vartan. Does anyone else? Councilmember Hairston.
Council President, I would just like to ask Councilmember Allen to share what she knows about that's happening at the Assembly. I'm very curious, and to thank Council Vartan for an excellent detailing of what this all entails.
Yeah, I mean, it's still where it's at. I mean, the legislature doesn't have any control over it. There are certain legislators that are interested in having this return back to COA. But it's, I mean, I don't know how to say this without a political feel to it, is that, yeah, I mean, I work for Assemblywoman Munoz, and we legitimately are the minority, and so you need to get both parties at the table. So there's an appetite for certain, for sure, to return it back to COA, but you really need the majority party to want to get to the table. So we're working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments or questions, members of council? Anyone from the public have anything to say on this? Okay, well, I think with that, I think we're done with this conversation.
I would
right?
just close it out by just saying that the consensus of the council is whatever it is. That
Right.
You don't want to proceed with the.
Right, I think that our consensus after the closed session was that this was not something we wanted to proceed with at this time. So, thank you, everyone, for your comments on this. And now we'll move on to council members' comments and new business. Anyone have anything they'd like to say?
I would, yeah.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Councilmember Allen.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to, I know everybody's gone, but I just wanted to acknowledge, sorry, my back is to you.
That's okay.
I'm not used to sitting in this chair. Maybe I can sit like this so you can see me. I just wanted to acknowledge that everybody came here tonight, or who came here to talk about Maple Street. I don't know if there's an appetite, and I haven't had the opportunity to talk to anybody really about where they stand on Maple Street. And I've been pretty vocal that I don't believe that we should do a permanent closure. So if we get to a place where we think that that is not a viable option, I would say that I think the public feels a little burned on the, as you heard tonight, the gas leaf blowers, Broad Street West. And if we choose that permanency is not something that individuals on the board or the council would want to do, I think in good faith we should pull it. I know we're going to hear from SDI, and maybe that's the night you decide, but I feel like there's not a lot of appetite for a permanent closure. So I just think taking it off the table would really allay some fears of the community. I have another thing to say, but I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that.
I totally want to respond, Council
Okay.
President,
Go ahead.
through you. So I actually learned a lot tonight, hearing residents voice their concern about the Maple Street closure. And I want to echo the nuance that I thought one of the speakers relayed, is that there is not a unanimous opinion about it. Some people are in favor of it being closed during certain hours or certain parts of the year, and earlier, later, and others are totally opposed to it. And so for me, what I learned, the permanency of it, which I can echo our council president, that I'm not necessarily in favor of the permanent closure either. And I think it is good practice to complete our due diligence and let the work of SDI, who is a quasi-governmental entity, do the work that they did and bring the experts in, which is what is so disconcerting to me, how people do not like to hear the experts give us advice to help us make good decisions. And I know government is slow on purpose, and it's frustrating, and but what I just wanted to make sure was clear, that the questions that were asked were really emphasizing the permanent closure, whereas that is not a decision or that we were voting on. And so I know it may have come up because in the midst of the pandemic, the closure was a very good thing for the community. It really allowed our businesses, who we value and support, and I understand it seemed like it was only those 4 restaurants, but that isn't where we are at this later stage. And so things evolve, And I am glad we had an opportunity to clarify that. So thank you, Council President, for doing that right up front and taking that off the table as the decision that we were seeming to be making.
Thank you, Councilmember Hairston. I think you raise a very good point, because I think people tonight presumed that the study was solely about a permanent closure. And there was, the way SDI explained it to me was that it was a range from doing nothing to permanent closure, with someplace in the middle being some way of doing a seasonal closure. Or a temporary closure for some portion of the year. And a lot of what they were also talking about was placemaking, which is how to make it so it's not just perceived as for restaurants, but how all the businesses can benefit. Also, there were complaints about the appearance of the orange barriers. And I think people really need to understand the orange barriers were, that was, because of the pandemic, it was what we were able to get and what we were able to get put in place quickly. And, Aaron did a yeoman's job of finding those and getting everything out there really fast. And, we needed something that was removable in case of an emergency. So I think, there are a lot of other things, ways we can make it more attractive, ways we can sort of introduce Summit branding, ways we can address traffic issues. There's a traffic study associated with that. So what I want to do is, is make clear that we're not prejudging things. We want to hear what SDI's consultants have to say. But at this point, I can say that I don't want to see a permanent closure, and I'm now hearing Councilmember Allen and Councilmember Hairston saying the same. So, but there's a lot of other information of value that I think we ought to hear before we take any action at all. So that's where I stand.
Yeah, I'd like to contribute my thoughts as well. I embrace SDI's analysis and very much look forward to hearing what their experts say on how we can improve upon the Maple Street closure when it is closed. But I'm wondering if we want to consider the possibility of, given the scope of insights they'll share with us, if we would consider the concept of permanent closure something that we don't envision doing, and consider an earlier removal of that from the options, with still being very much looking forward to hearing the full scope of the presentation about all the other ways we can improve upon Maple Street. And then I think that could go a long way as far as a lot of the comments we heard tonight, and otherwise, I think that's something I would be very open to thinking about. And I'm curious if anyone else at the table would consider that.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the last few that haven't spoken on this.
Go ahead.
I agree with Councilmember Hairston and Council President that I'm leaning toward not permanent closure as well. And I wish I would have been part of the discussions that we heard of that prior to this meeting that the public had. There was a particular group of people who had a discussion. It was obvious. I asked to be a part of that discussion twice. And I think we could have provided some insight into what we were thinking at that point, some facts. It's always good to invite council members to those kind of conversations. So,
thank you, Councilmember Vinegar. Yes.
Yeah, I would
Councilmember O'Sullivan.
just like to, I guess, remind everyone the reason why we did it in the first place. It was for the pandemic, and it was the silver lining, one of the silver linings of the pandemic. And I just took a drive this past weekend through various towns west of here. We're at 99% occupancy rate in our downtown, and some of the conditions of other towns, which will go unnamed, were really not in great shape. So I think when people they look at it as a giveaway to the 4 restaurants, I think it has driven foot traffic into the shops into their ability. I mean, there's really no empty stores. You'd have to search high and far for an empty shop in town. I don't remember this ever being this vibrant, ever. So I'm also, though, with council, and Councilwoman Allen and I have spoken about this. I don't envision a full year closure of Maple Street, but I think the genie is out of the bottle. If we don't close Maple Street for some portions of the year, I would fear we're going to go back to, 90% occupancy rates and people struggling to pay rent. So I'm looking forward, though, to hearing from the expert, and that's where I want to, I don't want to prejudge it, but I don't envision a full-time closure either. But boy, has it been just incredible for downtown and all of the businesses.
Yeah, I think, it saved about 200 jobs initially, but it also did bring in foot traffic. We won an award, the 2021 Great Cities Award of New Jersey
Best
Award.
downtown.
Best downtown. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of value to this, and it did make Summit a dining destination, and that helps all the businesses, I think. So I think we shouldn't forget about that.
Yeah.
Councilmember Miniger, you had something else?
Yes, thank you, Council President. Oh, sorry.
No.
I just wanted to answer Councilmember Levine's question. Yes, I'd be for removing that ahead of time. I think it's not a bad idea. I don't even know what this proposal says at this moment, obviously.
Right.
But if that's in there, I think it would tame some fears by doing that.
Well, what did we say to SDI, who paid, I don't know, however many dollars to do this, partly to look at the permanent closure, partly to look at the temporary and all aspects of it. And we say, well, even before you tell us what you found through your consultant, we're taking it off the table. I don't feel comfortable with that, but.
No, I hear what you're saying. Maybe the point is, I think that this year, certainly this year, a permanent closure this year may be too soon.
No, I don't disagree with you, but I just think we
Right.
need to do this
But maybe there's a way to
carefully.
Yes, I agree, and maybe that's.
One thing I
something-
just want to add, permanently closing a road
It's no easy
is not an easy feat.
No.
It takes a lot of work.
Takes a long time.
The two things that happened, there was the initial executive order from Governor Murphy, and then when we did the one for this year, they extended the executive order. And the reason being is that we're still in the pandemic.
Right.
So a permanent closure is a much more arduous task to undertake in terms of studies, the impact, the statute was referred to. And that only happens if you're in a special improvement district when you can do that. It's much more complicated than people envision. So my advice to you guys is you have experts. I mean, people we're saying you're not giving us answers. The reason you're not experts, you're not a jack of all trades, master of none. You have the experts come and give you advice. You'll hear from them and what it is. I mean, the one thing I heard tonight too is one of them might be expanding the sidewalk, taking away the parking. There's all different facets. So if the sidewalks are expanded, you might not have parking on that stretch of road, but you'd have wider sidewalks where people could place tables. So there's a lot of different variables, and the people who do this, that STI is engaging, will come before you and give you that kind of guidance, I think. But I want everyone to understand, if there was that decision, it's incredibly arduous to do.
Right, so I mean, I think it's safe to say it wouldn't be happening this year anyway.
No, absolutely not.
Is there a way that we could sort of communicate that to allay some fears that this isn't going to happen overnight? This is, we want to hear about the process, but for this year, we are looking
I think even in the absence, because now the executive orders have been repealed or expired, not extended, however you want to say it. And in the absence of those gave towns and municipalities broad latitude to do things that otherwise normally wouldn't be permitted. Now that those are gone, I think even a partial closure is going to be an arduous task. I don't think this is an easy undertaking to do, whether it's partial or full. So do I think this is going to be happening in short order? It is not. There'll be lots of public input. There'll be lots of, no matter what you do, even if it's a partial or, you know, you're going to expand the sidewalks, however you're going to do it. But I think that folks should understand that this is not something that will happen. I think it would be very doubtful that anything could happen in 2023.
Even
of
a
permanent
partial
nature.
closure.
Maybe partial, but again, we're doing it without any type of executive order. It was done really to try to save businesses and jobs and give people a place to go outside and have a meal and not lose their minds. And I think that it fulfilled that goal, and people realize there is some benefit to it, but it's going to be a much harder undertaking.
Okay, thank you.
I think legally too, you have ABC, who generally you can't have alcohol in a street.
Right.
Right? And so I think there are a lot of legal issues that we're going to have to go through. And I just will say, I think when I hear that maybe not this year, you know, when we're talking about permanent closure, maybe not this year will translate for the public that, well, then it's coming. Like, so I want to be able to, whatever we decide, I think that committing to that decision and taking it off the table if the permanent closure is not what everyone else wants, because the public needs to know they can trust that it's not going to kind of slide in at the end of the day. So, and not that it would, I'm just putting, that's what I've heard. So,
yeah, I don't want to misspeak. My point was, permanent closure is incredibly arduous.
Yeah.
I think that even partial closure is very arduous.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, if the governing, I'll draft whatever the government really wants and provide guidance. But I think that folks have to understand that, and the public should rest assured that this is not something that is done easily. There's lots of input. Because you got to remember, Maple Street crosses other streets that are state highways, county highways. I mean, and you'd be amazed at how many things are state highways that you don't even realize are state highways.
right. And I guess the question for me is, as you're speaking, is how does SDI then create a plan without doing the due diligence first? To even know if you can't close a street, why have we spent $13,000 on a placemaking potential if you can't even do it? So that just,
I think they are considering those things. I think they've considered those. My understanding is the person who's doing this report does know what goes into this.
And the good thing is, excuse me, Council President, and the good thing is we don't have to guess. We have SDI coming before us with all of the information that we asked them to do. And they've gotten lots of input for when it was a super huge good thing to be closing it, and we didn't rush to make any decisions. I know Councilman Minigar has been having very good conversations about the parklets, and it really has had us look at, and we've been very intentional about separating Maple Street closure and street closures from parklets. And so people are minimizing the impact of the pandemic, and they just are back to business, and it is probably not reasonable for us to expect patience and a lack of frustration. But I do not want to give up civility and expert advice. And so I will have patience with frustration, but not with thinking you can go and come up with your own ideas about things and say, vote on them now. That's not in the best interest of the city.
So is there, through you, Council President, that's a great point, Councilwoman Hairston. So is there a timeline, like so they're going to come and present to us on the 6th of December. Is there a particular timeline that we're looking at? Like, we would want to implement it next year? Do we have any sense?
I think we have to hear what the options are and what makes sense. I think, you know, we wouldn't be able to get it done if they come on the 6th. There would be ordinances and things we'd basically have to wait till the new year.
You can't do anything this year.
Of course, but that's what I was going to say, because we need at least 2 meetings.
I would venture to guess that, and I know Mr. Schrager and I discussed it, just putting in the temporary ordinance, all the hurdles and the studies that have to go about. I mean, again, when I say arduous, I don't know, Aaron's more gifted at understanding traffic flows and things like that, but it's not something, I don't think there'll be any introduction of an ordinance, because you have to introduce and pass an ordinance in the same year.
That's what I was trying to
So,
say.
yeah. And I think you have, before you even do that,
We got to figure out what
you
we're
have
going
to
to do.
figure out what you're gonna do, and, then, let's just say the folks, the council says, we wanna do a partial, summer months, when school's not in session. Then we'll have to do all the requisite studies, et cetera, then an ordinance is done. So you're probably talking, even on a partial, you're probably talking something wouldn't be in place till, I would imagine, late winter. February, something like that, because it's gonna take a little bit of time.
I think even late winter would be
Yeah.
optimistic, probably. So, I mean, I think I would say we should wait for the presentation, and then, figure out after that, we ought to have, we'll take public comment, we'll hear what everyone thinks about the presentation, we'll talk about it amongst ourselves as well, and then figure out what next steps would be. I don't want to take anything off the table, either. I think, I understand wanting to kind of reassure people, but I think let's let the process run its course. I think people need to understand that we have not prejudged this and we have not decided on a permanent closure. And I think a lot of the comments were presuming that. And I'm sorry that there's a lack of trust that when we say that we haven't decided this, that they, won't take us at our word, go to the presentation and make their comments then. But I think that's the smartest way to proceed. I don't know if anyone...
I think that the likelihood of a permanent closure, for all sorts of reasons, one, the opinions of people at this dais, as well as how arduous and difficult it would be, is very slim. Very, very. But I still
Incredibly.
think December 6th is a presentation. We listen, and we can...
We'll just give you an idea, the town of Leonia, because of Waze and all that stuff, the town of Leonia, where it sits between Route 80 and Route 4, becomes a huge cut-through, where people cut through Leonia. They say, oh, you're going to get traffic on 80, cut through to 4, and people cut through. So the town of Leonia, on their streets, they didn't close them. They said, this is a one-way street from these hours, to try to prevent people from doing that. They got sued by the state of New Jersey Department of Transportation. It's been in litigation for years. So that's just making something one way. When you close something, it takes on a whole different ramification.
Okay. Well, I think we all said our piece on this one?
I have another issue.
Okay, go ahead,
It
Councilmember
has nothing
Harrison.
to do with this, so if we're done on this
I
one.
think we are. I think we've kind of agreed that we will hear the presentation and move on from there. Okay. Go ahead.
So, Council President, if we're at council member comments.
Comments and new business,
new
but it turned
business.
into a DAR of sorts.
Oh, okay. So I really wanted to hear, and I'm not sure if that's from Director Schrager or what is happening with Bryan Pond and the county.
I think, could you give us an update, please, Director Schrager?
I can, through you, Council President.
Okay.
It's an update, it's not a good one. They are still awaiting permitting from the state. And they call, their consultant and the county themselves call every week. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's a Olmsted Brother Park, so that puts it in a whole nother category, even though they're just trying to essentially just aerate the ponds to try to get some depth to it. So everything's there. You saw the little hut got built, which houses the equipment. The electricity was run to it. It is just simply waiting for a permit, so.
Is it in the historical, did it go to their historical
So it
protection
gets
or something?
detoured over there, and that's not a quick place to get out of.
Well, I mean, that's how we ended up with the joint meeting with the extra money was the DEP permitting. It's a thing.
Yeah, and both, and then just kind of segue back into even with the, any closure, DOT has been really a mess. They didn't COVID very well, so there's not a lot of people working there. So we're just trying to put an island on Fernwood, and it's just 90-day review period, we get it back the 90th day. So yes, anything we would do there probably would take long, even if the process is clear, they're just taking forever. So it's all the state agencies right now. And a lot of it is staff shortage too, and an abundance of work, so.
Okay. Well, thank you for the
Council
update.
President? Oh, wait.
Yes. Oh, Erin.
You just mentioned the median on Fernwood. I didn't know if there was an update.
No, the update is that plans were resubmitted, and their last update was, they offered a suggestion and just said, you still have to do this, and just a reminder, we have 90 days and it's day 52, which is message loud and clear, we'll get it on the 90th day, which is some point this month, so.
So we're waiting on DOT, in other
Yes.
words. Okay,
So.
thank you.
Council
Okay.
President?
Yes.
We're never going to get out of here, but I did want to add something to the Bryant Park. So there was an herbicide put in the water to kill some of the invasive plants, and they're going to have a hydro rake in the water at some point, maybe not this year, but in the spring, where they're going to scoop out a lot of the gunk from the bottom. Aaron has confirmed the permitting is not there yet, but the aerator will be going in hopefully next year.
Okay,
So
thank you for that update.
something's going to happen, but government doesn't move so fast. It's happening.
All right, any other comments or new business from council members? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.